Chapter 696. You actually dared to come out? Felipe looked at Gray and Felipe in bewilderment. The two of them walking out of the city without any hesitation made him a little bewildered. He didn't know what the two of them were planning. He looked around and was a little worried that there might be an ambush nearby. Could this be a trap set by the Leopold family and other top families to ambush the Vika family? Be careful. The hunchbacked old man Jerome was also on high alert. He looked around and reminded everyone. For a moment, everyone from the Vika family couldn't help but be on high alert. Their eyes swept back and forth. Any slight movement would cause them to be on high alert. Rustle. A light breeze blew through a dense shrub, and the leaves of the shrub rustled. A magic light expert was nervous and immediately swept out a red flame. The original bushes turned into ashes in an instant, and even the ground melted into a magma lake. However, there was not a single person. The crimson magma lake was like an open mouth, as if it was laughing at the excessive nervousness of the Vega family. Gray looked at the magic light expert of the Vika family with a slight smirk. This was probably what it meant to be nervous. Don't be so nervous. I can guarantee that there isn't an ambush. His tone was sincere, but no matter how one listened, it sounded like a taunt. The magic light expert of the Vika family was so angry that his face turned red, and his fists were clenched so tightly that popping sounds could be heard. There really isn't an ambush. They naturally wouldn't believe Gray's words. They were on high alert again. The hunchbacked old man Jerome, the silver-haired old woman Jochina, and the skinny old man Felipe looked at each other and finally confirmed that there really wasn't an ambush. There really are only two of them. There isn't an ambush around. The hunchbacked old man Jerome coughed lightly and said, hearing the hunchbacked old man Jerome say this, the other members of the Vega family all let out a sigh of relief. But that demon-light powerhouse from before was actually furious, angrily glaring at Gray. You're courting death. How dare you trick us? His face was burning with shame and indignation. He stomped on the air and jumped off the giant bird's back, dashing towards Gray. He held a saber in his hand, which was wrapped in crimson flames. It turned into a huge saber that was several meters long and slashed down with terrifying heat. Fod's hand formed a blade as he slashed through the air, crimson flames rolling towards the magic light rank powerhouse attacking Gray like a tidal wave. You should worry about yourself first. A cold air spread out, extinguishing the wave-like crimson flames in an instant. The hunchbacked elder, Jerome, stood in front of Fod, blocking his path. At the same time, the silver-haired old lady, Jochina, and the skinny old man, Felipe, appeared at Fod's side and back respectively, faintly surrounding him. If an Annihilation class elite escaped, it would be very troublesome to hide in the dark and wreak havoc. Therefore, they had to kill him there and not let him escape. A magic light dares to attack Gray Fergus. They underestimate Gray Fergus. The Vika family does not understand how scary Gray Fergus is. Seeing the Vika family allow a magic light to attack Gray, on the wall, a woman from the Leopold family, who looked to be in her 30s or 40s, shook her head. She was one of the people who had gone to the Raleigh family. She had seen Gray Fergus's skills. Not to mention the disaster-class blood beast, Gray Fergus's power alone was enough to easily kill this magic light. The Vika family really underestimated Gray Fergus. The leader of the Leopold family, Maxwell, shook his head. He had also seen Gray's skills, especially the skills that made people grow old and die. Even now, when he thought about it, he still felt a chill run down his spine. Do you think they have a chance of winning? The woman, who looked to be in her 30s or 40s, asked. I don't think so. Gray Fergus has a disaster-class blood beast, which is a hidden skill. Even with the disaster-class blood beast, he only has 2 annihilation classes. The enemy has 3 annihilation classes and many magic light. Maxwell shook his head. He did not think the fight was going to end well. He had already made up his mind. If the two of them lost, he would seal the city until the Vika family left. The Vika family could not stay there for too long. They would have to leave. The city's resources could only last for a month. The solution was simple. He would give the resources to the Leopold family first. As for the normal citizens starving to death, compared to his own life, that was an acceptable loss. Schwa! A red, giant knife fell from the sky. It was like a meteor falling from the sky toward Gray. The Vika family magic light elite had an evil smile on his face. Only his opponent's blood could wash away the humiliation he had just suffered. The giant knife was getting closer and closer to Gray, but Gray was still in shock. He did not dodge. The Vika family magic light elite coldly laughed. If his opponent was able to qualify for the trial tower, he thought he would have some power. Now, it looked like he was just SOSO. Boom! The giant knife was only a few feet away from Gray. At that moment, a giant silver-gray claw suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It was as big as a room. It slapped toward the giant knife and the Vika family magic light elite behind it. Squelch! This was a terrifying claw. It was a claw that seemed to be able to tear the void apart. The red, flaming giant knife was instantly shattered. The Vika family magic light elite had no time to dodge and was hit. Under the terrifying power of the destructive level, his whole body exploded. Blood, flesh, and bones flew everywhere. There was not a single intact part of his body. The first magic light elite of the Vika family had died. Harvey, within the Jia family, there were those who were close to this magic light rank powerhouse who cried out in grief. Everything had happened too suddenly. They didn't even have time to save him before he was already dead. Calamity level blood beast. Someone looked at the owner of the giant claw in shock. His face was full of horror. Its body was silver gray. It was more than 40 meters long. Its huge body was like a small silver mountain. This was definitely a calamity level blood beast. Didn't you say there was no ambush? Why did it suddenly appear? Some people were shocked and alert at the same time. They looked around nervously. They were afraid there was another ambush. This should be a calamity-level blood beast. He must have put it in a space item. That is why the three masters did not discover it. Some people were still calm. They looked scared as they guessed. Not good. Quick, go higher. It is jumping. Suddenly, someone screamed in horror. He quickly commanded the giant bird to fly higher. Some people were sweating profusely. They jumped away from the giant bird and dodged to the side. Aside from the three Annihilation class elites, everyone else in the Vika family was scared and panicked. The Bramble Disaster Crocodile's giant body was flying. It was quickly approaching them. After slapping the Magic Light elite to death, the Bramble Disaster Crocodile jumped. Its giant body jumped toward the 5 giant birds. The 5 giant birds were only at the top of the city wall. They were only a few dozen feet high. With the Bramble Disaster Crocodile's power, it was easy for it to jump. Squelch! The 4 giant birds dodged in a panic, but there was still one giant bird that couldn't dodge. The giant bird, along with the 3 magic light rank experts on its back, had their flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Not a single part of the giant bird was left intact. It did not have time to grieve for the loss of its 3 friends. After the Bramble Disaster Crocodile landed, it jumped again. It jumped toward the remaining 4 giant birds in the sky. Another giant bird was hit by the giant claw. Seeing that giant bird and the people on it were going to be slapped to death like the giant bird and the people on it, it was at this moment. Shio! 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 The silver-haired old woman Jochina rushed forward. Countless giant ice blades followed. They screamed and hit the Bramble Disaster Crocodile's body. Dong! 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 The sound of flesh being pierced was not the sound of flesh being pierced. It was the sound of metal being clanged. The Bramble Disaster Crocodile was a calamity-level blood beast that specialized in defense. After being alloyed, its defense was even more terrifying. It was not something that a normal destruction level could hurt. However, after being hit, the Bramble Disaster Crocodile's body couldn't help but sway slightly. The giant bird that was hit by its claw managed to escape. Damn it! How did he have this kind of skill? One of the people on the giant bird, just now, was Miguel Vija. He had escaped death by a hair's breadth. His face was pale and filled with fear and disbelief. Gray Leopold actually had this kind of skill. He had almost died under his opponent's terrifying skill. He had originally come for revenge, but he didn't expect to almost die at his opponent's hands again. This is the Leopold clan's hidden trump card. The silver-haired old woman, Jochina, looked at the bramble disaster crocodile with an ashen face. In a moment of carelessness, they had actually lost 4 magic light warriors. One of their flying beasts had also been killed. This made her expression very ugly. The Leopold clan was one of the weakest clans among the top-ranked clans. They hadn't been a top-ranked clan for too long. They didn't have much of a background to speak of. She had originally thought that the Vija clan's strength would be enough to destroy them easily. However, she didn't expect that the Leopold clan would lose a few people before the Leopold clan suffered any losses. I'll block this bramble disaster crocodile. You guys attack him together. With a flash, the silver-haired old woman Jochina pounced towards the bramble disaster crocodile. She waved the transparent ice sword in her hand. Instantly, a giant ice blade slashed towards the bramble disaster crocodile. After receiving the silver-haired old woman Jochina's order, the other members of the Vija clan couldn't help but look at Gray with unfriendly gazes. Among them, the brown-haired middle-aged man's eyes shone with cold, killing intent as he called out to the other members of the Vija clan. Attack together, don't give him a chance to breathe. Instantly, the magic light warriors of the Vega clan charged at Gray from all directions, brimming with killing intent. Even the 4 giant birds in the sky stretched out their claws and grabbed towards Gray. In an instant, Gray was surrounded by more than 20 magic light warriors. Chapter 697. Gray Leopold died. On top of one of the giant birds, Miguel Vica sneered as he coldly stared at Gray. At this moment, he no longer cared about the revenge of that woman in front of Gray Leopold. Gray Leopold was too dangerous. He had to kill him as soon as possible. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One attack after another flew towards Gray. There were crimson flames, sharp wind blades, metal blades, and even huge shadow tentacles. They blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Even the sunlight was temporarily blocked, completely submerging the area Gray was in. All of Gray's escape routes were blocked, making it impossible for Gray to escape. Over 20 magic light warriors attacking me at the same time. This treatment is really... Looking at the attacks that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, the corners of Gray's mouth curled up slightly. In the next moment, from in front of him, a dark green mist endlessly surged out, turning into a monstrous wave of anger that went against the flow and swept towards the sky. Chi, chi, chi. Under the dark green fog, the scorching flames instantly dissipated as if they had been splashed by extremely cold water. The sharp blades formed by the metal ability quickly decayed and turned into liquid as if they had encountered a strong acid, and the huge shadow tentacles quickly melted in an instant. All of the attacks attacking Gray dissipated like fireworks under the dark green mist. Not only that, the dark green mist continued to surge upwards, engulfing the owners of those attacks. A giant bird was wrapped in the dark green mist, letting out a painful and mournful cry. Its body's hair and flesh quickly disappeared. Even its bones were melting, finally turning into a pool of liquid that fell down. An old man was wrapped in the dark green mist, only able to let out a scream before also turning into a pool of liquid. No. A middle-aged woman's feet were wrapped in the dark green mist, and the dark green mist spread from her feet to her entire body. She screamed in fear and struggled desperately, but in the end, she still could not escape the fate of death. Her entire body turned into a pool of liquid, and only the short sword in her hand remained intact, stabbing into the ground with a splat. In the end, 2 giant birds and 5 magic light warriors died under the dark green mist. No, impossible. How could he be so strong? Retreating far away, Miguel Vica's face was full of shock and horror. Among the 2 dead giant birds, one of them was the one he was riding. At the critical moment, if the brown-haired middle-aged man had not saved him and brought him away, he would probably have turned into a pool of acid by now. Some kind of inherited weapon? The brown-haired man's forehead was covered in cold sweat, his face solemn. The power that the opponent had just shown was definitely at the destruction grade, and with his age, he should not have such power. He could not help but suspect that the man had an inherited weapon. The only thing that confused him was that he did not see the man use a weapon. He suspected that the man's inherited weapon was some kind of wearable magic weapon. D*M in it. He has an inherited weapon. We are no match for him. Only the three of you can fight him. Pulling far away, the other magic light warriors were still in shock. Their faces were full of fear. That moment was like the speed of life and death. They had seen their companions die under the dark green mist, and they had almost followed in their companions' footsteps. That kind of fear was indescribable. Even now, they could not help but feel a chill run down their backs. When they touched their backs, they realized that they were already soaked in sweat. Pang! Suddenly, there was a loud noise, and the ground shook violently. A shadow flew out and crashed into the ground, creating a giant crater. Huge cracks spread out in all directions with the pothole as the center, a huge spiderweb. They looked over and saw the silver-haired old woman, Josina, lying in the crater. She was wounded, and there was blood at the corner of her mouth. In the battle with the bramble disaster crocodile, she was clearly at a disadvantage. How is this possible? Mr. Josina is not the bramble disaster crocodile's opponent? Seeing the silver-haired old woman, Josina, injured, the Wagia family, who had escaped with their lives, felt a chill run down their spines. Their eyes were filled with shock. Normally, in a battle of the same level, the human would have the advantage. After all, the blood beasts could only use their bodies and powers to fight. Aside from their bodies and powers, humans could also use weapons. They could use weapons to increase their power. Some people with blood skills could even use blood skills to increase their power. But in a one-on-one situation, one of the three annihilation elites of the Wagia family, Josina, was at a disadvantage. The bramble disaster crocodile was not injured. She was the one who had been injured. The bramble disaster crocodile cannot have such a strong defense. It has a metallized ability. It might even have an alloyed ability. Josina struggled to get up. She wiped away the blood at the corner of her mouth. She looked at the bramble disaster crocodile with a serious expression, especially the silver color of the bramble disaster crocodile's body. Her attacks were useless against the bramble disaster crocodile. She cannot even cause any damage to it. Instead, the bramble disaster crocodile was able to withstand her attacks and get close to her. It whipped her with its tail and injured her. The bramble disaster crocodile's defense was clearly abnormal. The Leopold family's inheritance-level magic weapon could not only control the disaster-class blood beasts, but could also give the disaster-class blood beast the ability to metallize the corpses. It was definitely an inheritance-level magic weapon that was extremely powerful. She looked at the remaining members of the Wagia family. Her face looked glum. 5 more magic light warriors had been killed. When the Wagia family members were attacked by the dark green mist, she saw them. But she was in danger because of the bramble disaster crocodile. She did not have time to save them. Aside from an inheritance-level magic weapon that can control the disaster-class blood beasts, they might have another inheritance-level magic weapon. How can the Leopold family have so many inheritance-level magic weapons? While she was shocked, her face was filled with suspicion. Even the Wagia family only had one inheritance-level magic weapon. However, the Leopold family had already displayed 2. In addition to the one in Fod's body, the Leopold family had a total of 3 inheritance-level magic weapons. She found it hard to believe. Compared to the Leopold family, the Wagia family was at the bottom of the top families. 3 inheritance-level magic weapons. On the other side of the battle, the hunchbacked Elder Jerome and the lanky Elder Felipe naturally sensed the situation. Their faces turned ashen. First, there was the sudden appearance of a disaster-level blood fiend, followed by the appearance of an inherited-level magic weapon. Originally, they had thought that they would be able to take down the Leopold clan easily. However, they did not expect the situation to change again and again. "Felipe, you deal with that kid," the hunchbacked Elder Jerome said to the tall and skinny Elder Felipe. Felipe nodded, and his figure flashed as he approached Gray from behind. "What? You're not worried at all?" Seeing that Fod had no intention of intercepting Felipe, the hunchbacked elder Jerome, who was prepared to stop Fod, asked in confusion. Fod's clothes were tattered. He was at a disadvantage against the combined forces of the hunchbacked elder Jerome and the lanky elder Felipe. He was hit by the two's attacks many times, but Gray had already given him an alloyed defense. Other than being in a sorry state, he was unharmed. Hearing the hunchbacked elder Jerome's question, he sneered. "Worried? You should be worried about him." Although he didn't fully understand Gray's strength, he still had some understanding. Naturally, he wasn't worried. Boom! The bramble calamity crocodile quickly pounced at the silver-haired old woman Josina. Its huge room-sized claws slammed down at her. The silver-haired old woman Josina dodged to the side and stabbed her sword into the ground. Crack! Large amounts of ice suddenly appeared, covering the surrounding ground with ice. The bramble calamity crocodile that was closer to her was quickly covered in ice. The ice attached itself to the bramble calamity crocodile's body, binding it. Although the bramble calamity crocodile was violently struggling and breaking free of the ice, the sword that Josina stabbed into the ground continued to inject cold air into it. The other parts of the bramble calamity crocodile were covered in ice again. For a moment, she and the bramble calamity crocodile were in a stalemate. "Now!" the silver-haired old lady Josina shouted. Following her shout, the lanky elder Felipe rushed out. A huge red flame vortex wrapped around his spear as he attacked Gray's back. She sensed the lanky elder Felipe rushing over, so she used her ice to temporarily trap the bramble calamity crocodile, creating an opportunity for Felipe to kill Gray. Whoosh! With a scary roaring sound, a giant red flame vortex attacked Gray from behind. It was headed straight for Gray. The lanky elder Felipe was already 300 feet away from Gray's back. After he attacked, he instantly crossed the distance of 300 feet. At that moment, all the sounds of battle were silenced. Only the sound of the red flame vortex thrusting toward Gray's back was heard. "You really think highly of me. An Annihilation class elite is using a sneak attack against me." Just as the giant red flame vortex was about to hit Gray's back, Gray turned around. He looked at the lanky elder Felipe with a mocking expression. The lanky elder Felipe was shocked. He felt something was wrong, but he did not hesitate to stab forward with his spear. Pang! There was a loud noise. Countless flames spread everywhere. The red vortex of flames was less than a meter away from Gray when it collided with an invisible barrier. It could not advance any further, and finally collapsed with a loud bang, turning into countless tiny flames. Gray was less than 3 feet away, but it was like there was a gap between them. The flames were raging, but Gray was not hurt. He still looked at the lanky elder Felipe with a mocking expression. Chapter 698. He blocked an Annihilation Great attack without getting hurt. How can he be so strong? Monster, he's a monster. Seeing the tall and skinny old man Felipe attacking Gray from behind, the Vega family members who had suffered many casualties couldn't help but feel excited. They looked on with anticipation, hoping that Gray would be burned to ashes by the flames. But the result was completely different from what they had expected. The ferocious red flame vortex that had reached the Annihilation grade was blocked by an invisible barrier. It couldn't hurt Gray Leopold at all. He had blocked the Annihilation grade attack without getting hurt. This was something they had not expected at all. Originally, they thought that even if the other party could survive, he would be severely injured. They did not expect that not only did he survive, but he also blocked the attack with an unbelievable method and was unscathed. What is this ability of yours? There was a strong rebounding force coming from the long spear. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pierce through. The tall and skinny old man Felipe looked at Gray, who was not far away, and was unharmed. The ominous feeling in my heart was confirmed. My full-powered attack, enhanced by my magic weapon, was actually unable to even get close to Roland. There was clearly nothing in front of me, but my attack felt as if it had crashed into a thick wall made of alloy. unable to advance even an inch. He had never seen such an ability before. Gray didn't answer. He just looked at him coldly. A strong sense of danger rose in his heart. He reflexively retreated. Bang! With a muffled sound, he couldn't help but groan. He, who was retreating, hit an invisible barrier. His body suddenly staggered. Not good. The sense of danger in his heart was even stronger. He quickly rushed to the left. Bang! Once again, he crashed into an invisible barrier. All the hair on his body stood on end. He quickly rose into the air, but he was still blocked by an invisible barrier. There seemed to be invisible barriers around him, and he seemed to be locked in an invisible cage. With Gray's vision, he could see that there were many invisible barriers in front of Felipe. They blocked Felipe's path and formed a sealed rectangular space, locking Felipe in. What kind of ability is it? You aren't Gray Leopold. Who are you? His face pale, Felipe felt that what the other party was using was not a legacy weapon, but more like his own ability. But with the background of the Leopold family, it was impossible for them to have the ability to nurture such a powerful descendant. He had deep doubts about the other party's identity as a descendant of the Leopold family. No, I'm Gray Leopold, but I'm also Gray Fergus. Gray said in a voice so low that only Felipe could hear. He looked at Felipe, who was locked in a sealed space, and was very satisfied with his experiment. For the time being, he hadn't discovered any offensive derivative abilities among the spatial law abilities he had obtained. However, spatial law abilities were at the level of laws after all. They were naturally higher in level than ordinary abilities and mixed abilities. Even if he hadn't discovered any offensive derivative abilities for the time being, with a little flexibility, it would be enough to become an extremely powerful attack. Just like now, it could easily trap an Annihilation class elite in a sealed space. It was like a bird in a cage. It could not escape. Felipe, seeing that Felipe, who had launched a sneak attack on Gray, had been controlled by Gray using some special method, the silver-haired old lady, Josina, revealed a worried expression. She pulled out the sword she had stabbed into the ground, prepared to charge over and break the cage from the outside to save Felipe. When she pulled her sword out of the ground, the cold air surrounding the Bramble Disaster Crocodile suddenly disappeared. The Bramble Disaster Crocodile struggled. It broke free of the ice that bound its body. Its thick, giant tail roared as it lashed out at her. Dong! She blocked the attack with her sword, but she was still entangled by the Bramble Disaster Crocodile. She was locked in a fierce battle. She would not be able to escape in a short amount of time. Ka! 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 Gray looked at the silver-haired old woman, Josina, who was entangled by the Bramble Disaster Crocodile. He looked back at the tall, skinny old man, Felipe. His left hand suddenly clenched. In his vision, the rectangle that no one else could see was quickly shrinking. In the blink of an eye, it was the size of a coffin. The tall, skinny old man, Felipe, was trapped in a space that was the size of a coffin. He felt like if he kept shrinking the space, the tall, skinny old man, Felipe, would be squashed into a pile of meat. Leaving Annihilation class elite without a body was not in his interest. Han-sun pulled out his sword. The sword was surrounded by a dark green light. He thrust it toward the tall, skinny old man, Felipe's heart. No! When the space became the size of a coffin, the tall, skinny old man, Felipe, was already in shock. When he saw the dark green long sword coming, he screamed in despair. Blurg! The space barrier was pierced. No, it was more accurate to say that the moment the sword came down, Gray created a hole in the space barrier. It was big enough for the sword to go through. It went through the space barrier. The dark green long sword pierced through the tall, skinny old man, Felipe's heart. It pierced through the tall, skinny old man's heart. The space barrier was removed. The tall, skinny old man, Felipe, collapsed. His mouth was bleeding. His eyes were rolling. Blood came out of his heart like a fountain. After twitching for a while, the tall, skinny old man, Felipe, stopped struggling. His eyes were wide open. He did not want to die. Mr. Felipe is dead. The people of the Vigia family, who had escaped Gray's attack, were frozen. They could not believe what they were seeing. One of the three strongest elites of the Vigia family, Mr. Felipe, who was an Annihilation class elite, was dead. He had died at the hands of a young man who was way too young. They could not believe it, and they did not want to believe it. Gray Leopold killed Mr. Felipe. Miguel Vigia's face was full of shock and fear. He was shocked by what he was seeing. Mr. Felipe had been killed, and the person who had killed him was Gray Leopold, who he had fought before. Because he was scared, his body started to shake. Even Mr. Felipe, who was an Annihilation class elite, had been killed. What would happen to him? With a grudge between him and Han's son would not let him go. He wanted to turn around and run, but his body was shaking uncontrollably. He could not use any of his strength. He has become stronger. His power is growing so fast. It is no wonder Mr. Fod went against everyone's wishes and led the Leopold family to follow him. The middle-aged woman on the wall, who looked to be 30 or 40 years old, and the leader of the Leopold family, Maxwell, looked at each other. Their eyes were full of shock. Back then, Gray Fergus had been able to defeat Mr. Fod because he had a disaster-class Blood Beast Control Corps. His power should not have reached Annihilation class. Now, Hansen's power had reached Annihilation class. He was not just any Annihilation class elite. After all, he had easily killed an Annihilation class elite. Hansen's growth speed shocked them. They thought even the Holy Son of Chaos Holy Palace might not have been stronger than Hans Sr. Felipe is dead. The silver-haired old woman, Jochina, had been in a fierce battle with the Bramble Calamity Crocodile, but she didn't forget to pay attention to Gray and Felipe. When she saw Gray easily kill Felipe, her body turned cold, and her forehead was covered in cold sweat. What kind of monster had the Vigia family offended? 3 Annihilation class elites and 20 Magic Light class elites were coming. The enemy only had 2 people walk out of the city, yet they had killed 5 Magic Light warriors and 2 Magic Light class beasts. Now, even the Annihilation class Felipe had been killed. If she had known this would happen, she would not have agreed to attack the Leopold family. How could a clan at the bottom of the top clans be so easily bullied? This was a monstrous family in sheep's clothing. They looked weak, but once you provoked them, you would find that they were just putting on a weak appearance. Pang! A shadow was slammed into the ground. The ground quickly cracked and exploded. Countless rocks and mud flew everywhere. Many of them weighed a few dozen tons. The one who had been slammed into the ground was Fod. Seeing the tall, skinny old man, Felipe, die, the hunchback old man, Jerome, was furious. He suddenly exploded with a scary power that was more than an Annihilation class. He used his spear to slam Fod into the ground from the sky. The spear in his hand was an Inheritance class magic weapon. He must have used the Inheritance class magic weapon to increase his power. That was why he was able to unleash a scary power that was more than an Annihilation class. You deserve to die. The hunchback old man, Jerome, stared at Gray with red eyes. A scary, murderous vibe blew away the clouds in the sky. A giant red pillar of fire descended from the sky toward Gray. Pung! The crimson pillar of flame collided with the invisible spatial barrier and was unable to advance any further. Just like the crimson flame vortex, it collapsed and dissipated. Gray, who was behind it, was still completely unharmed. You are the ones who deserve to die. You need to understand that you are the invaders. Gray looked at the hunchback old man, Jerome, coldly. Whoosh! His body was covered in purple light. His speed increased tremendously. He quickly approached the hunchback old man, Jerome. You monster! Seeing that Gray was rapidly approaching at a speed even faster than him, the hunchbacked old man Jerome's spear was wrapped in crimson flames. The terrifyingly high temperature caused the air to violently expand as he thrust his spear at Gray. Pung! The attack was blocked by the invisible space barrier again. It did not hurt Gray at all. Not only that, but there were invisible space barriers forming around him. They were sealing the space around him. Be careful, Master Jerome dodged. Although they could not see the invisible space barrier, they had seen how the tall, skinny old man, Felipe, was trapped. The other members of the family could not help but anxiously remind him. There was no need for reminders. The hunchback old man, Jerome, was already alert. He stepped into the air, and the air swirled. His body quickly rose into the air to dodge. Chapter 699. Whoosh! The hunchbacked old man Jerome's body rose vertically, his body turning into an afterimage as he shot towards the sky like an arrow. He was about to rush out of the cuboid space formed by the spatial barrier that hadn't been sealed yet. At this moment, covered in purple light, Gray instantly appeared above the hunchbacked old man Jerome. His sword was wrapped in dark green mist as it turned into a several-meter-long greatsword, slashing towards the hunchbacked old man Jerome. "Get out of my way!" The hunchbacked old man Jerome roared. His spear wrapped in crimson flames carried a terrifying power that exceeded the destruction grade as he stabbed upwards. Gotcha! The dark green greatsword made a crisp sound as it shattered. Gray, who was holding the dark green greatsword, retreated, but the hunchbacked old man Jerome's momentum was temporarily blocked. Although the hunchbacked old man Jerome had quickly dodged upwards after striking Gray, that momentary delay allowed an invisible space barrier to appear at the top, sealing the only exit of the cuboid space. Like Felipe, the hunchbacked old man Jerome was also trapped in a cage formed by a spatial barrier. Although the space barrier is sturdy, it takes a long time to form, which is a disadvantage. Seeing that he had successfully locked the hunchbacked old man Jerome in the space cage, Gray let out a sigh of relief. With the powerful defense of the space barrier, the cage was definitely extremely sturdy. As long as one was locked in the cage, there was almost no chance of escaping. However, this method wasn't without its drawbacks. The drawback was that it couldn't form a space cage in an instant. It had to be constructed one space barrier after another to finally form a space cage. Although with his current reaction speed, the construction of the space cage was already extremely fast, there was still time. If he faced an extremely fast opponent, it was very likely that he would be able to escape before the space cage was completed. Just now, if he hadn't blocked the hunchbacked old man Jerome in time, the old man would have been able to escape the space cage. It would be great if I could form a space cage in an instant. I don't know if I can do it after practicing for a long time or after increasing my realm. Gray's eyes revealed a trace of anticipation. If he could form a space cage in an instant, then no enemy would be able to escape unless they could instantly disappear from his sight. Lord Jerome is also trapped. Seeing that the hunchbacked old man Jerome was also unable to escape and was trapped in an invisible space cage, the remaining Raleigh family members suddenly seemed to have lost their strength as their faces turned pale. Not long ago, they had seen Lord Felipe die tragically. Now that Lord Jerome was also trapped, their hearts instantly turned cold. Would Lord Jerome be killed like Lord Felipe? Do you really think this thing could trap me? Being trapped in the space cage, the hunchbacked old man Jerome, without hesitation, he instantly activated the Law's blood skill. Jerome's blood, SSS, boom. He infused the inherited level mana weapon in his hand with the power of the Blood Fiend. Under the enhancement of the inherited level mana weapon, the power of the Blood Fiend increased by another level, reaching an extremely frightening level. Surrounded by black flames, the Blood Fiend looked like a black sun. With a loud bang, the Blood Fiend thrust its spear at the invisible spatial barrier. This was a terrifying attack. This was the most terrifying attack Gray had ever encountered. The temperature of the spear had reached an unimaginable level. Even silver-tier magic weapons would melt easily. Even some low-quality gold-tier weapons would melt as well. Rumble. The long spear wrapped in black flames collided with the spatial barrier. The violent explosion was even louder than thunder. It was as if the universe had just been born, the sound of heaven and earth splitting apart. No matter if it was the people of the Wagia family or the people of the Leopold family on the city wall, they couldn't help but stare unblinkingly at the place where the long spear wrapped in black flames collided with the spatial barrier. Whether the defense was stronger or the attack was stronger, the result would be revealed in the next moment. He blocked it. The black flames retreated, and the situation of the collision appeared clearly in front of both sides. The spear had clearly hit a certain spot and could not move an inch further. That invisible barrier had blocked Jerome's spear that had exploded with his blood skill. The scary attack and the scary defense collided. In the end, the defense came out on top. The defense is stronger than I thought. Gray let out a breath. He did not know how strong the defense of the spatial barrier was, but as a barrier with a spatial element, it could not be weak. Now, the Wagia family's Annihilation class elite had proven that to him. Strong. Extremely strong. The Wagia family's Annihilation class elite had used blood skill, an inherited level weapon, to buff him. His battle power had surpassed normal Annihilation class elites, but he was still unable to break the spatial barrier. One could only imagine how strong the defense of the spatial barrier was. The old hunchback Jerome wanted to attack the spatial barrier again, but Gray was not going to give him the chance. He reached out his left hand and made a grabbing motion. The rectangular space quickly shrank. In the end, it shrank to the size of coffin. It trapped the old hunchback Jerome and prevented him from moving. Blurk! The sword had a dark green mist around it. Gray attacked the old hunchback Jerome just like he had done with Felipe. The old hunchback Jerome madly struggled, but it was futile. Just like Felipe, his heart was pierced by Gray's spatial barrier. Pang! Blood gushed out of his chest, and there were traces of dark green on it. The spatial barrier was removed, and the hunchbacked old man Jerome's body powerlessly fell to the ground. He rolled a few times before lying stiffly on the ground. Blood dyed the ground beneath him red. He was just like Felipe. After a futile struggle, his eyes were wide open. He did not want to die. The moment he died, he regretted it. If he could, he would not have provoked the Leopold family. Unfortunately, there were no more ifs. Mr. Jerome is dead, too? How is that possible? The people of the Wagia family were too shocked. Their bodies went soft and sat on the ground. Their eyes looked lifeless. It was not that they were weak. It was just that they could not believe what was happening in front of them. The Annihilation class Felipe had died. Now, even Annihilation class Jerome was dead. Illusion. This is all an illusion. Miguel Wagia kept shaking his head. It was like he was in a trance. No matter how hard he shook his head, when he opened his eyes, he saw the same result. The two Annihilation class elites of the Wagia family were still lying on the ground. Run. The silver-haired old woman, Josina, was cold. Her clothes were soaked in sweat. She only had one thought in her mind, and that was to run. She did not care about what would happen to the other people of the Wagia family, but she knew that if she did not run, she was going to die there. The scary cold air covered the sky and the ground. It attacked the bramble disaster crocodile. It froze the bramble disaster crocodile. She turned around and ran. She pushed her Annihilation class speed to the max. She flew into the sky. Her body became a light shadow that escaped far away. Behind her, the bramble disaster crocodile broke free from the ice and chased after her. Because it could not fly, it could only chase after her on the ground. Mr. Josina is running away. Let's run too. Seeing the silver-haired old woman, Josina, run away, the other people of the Wagia family seemed to have woken up from a dream. They were scared and ran in all directions. They all used the fastest speed they had ever used in their lives. It was like there was a demon chasing after them. Looking at Miguel Wagia, the brown-haired, middle-aged man hesitated. He gritted his teeth, grabbed Miguel Wagia, and ran forward. If it was his brother's son, he would not have hesitated to leave him behind. However, Miguel Wagia was his and his sister-in-law's son. He was his son, so he could not bear to leave him behind. He decided to take him and run. Do not let them escape. Gray ordered Fod, who had climbed out of the giant crater unscathed. He quickly chased after the silver-haired old woman, Josina. With the silver-haired old woman, Josina's speed, only he could catch up with her. So, he let Fod go after the others while he went after the silver-haired old woman, Josina. Go after them. Do not let them escape. Seeing the two Annihilation elites easily killed by Gray, the higher-ups of the Leopold family were silent for a while. They all jumped out of the city wall and chased after the elites of the Wagia family. How dare you attack the Leopold family? Don't even think about leaving. An elder of the Leopold family roared like an angry lion. He quickly chased after the elites of the Wagia family. Not long ago, when he learned that Fod and Gray had offended the Wagia family, he was very angry. His words were full of dissatisfaction. Now, he could not help but be shocked. What had happened before must have offended Fod and Gray. If he did not do something to redeem himself, when Fod and Gray came to settle the score, even if he did not die, he would be in a miserable state. How dare you ask Mr. Gray and Mr. Fod to kill themselves? You do not know what is good for you. A middle-aged man with a mustache quickly chased after a middle-aged woman of the Wagia family. He shouted as he chased. Seeing him like this, if one did not know what he had done before, they would have thought he was loyal to Gray and Fod. Stay. The middle-aged woman, who looked to be in her 30s or 40s, and the leader of the Leopold family, Maxwell, quickly rushed out. They each chased after a magic light warrior of the Wagia family. The two of them felt lucky. Facing the threat of the Wagia family, although they did not think Gray Fergus had a high chance of winning, just in case, the two of them were not like the other higher-ups of the Leopold family. Their words were full of dissatisfaction and resentment. Although they did not actively stand on Gray Fergus's side, at least they did not stand on the wrong side. The settling of the score should not have anything to do with them. Of course, it was safer to be proactive now. Chapter 700. So, in the sky, the silver-haired old woman was running. The scary speed of an Annihilation class left a series of afterimages in the sky. If a blood warrior who knew what this speed meant saw her, they would have been very jealous. They would have screamed Annihilation class elite. An Annihilation class elite had a destructive power. They were the symbol of destruction. They were the elites who stood at the top of the pyramid. In a situation where rule-level experts rarely appeared in front of the world, they were the most powerful group of people. Most of the time, their names were enough to intimidate an area and make many large families submit. They did not dare to have any thoughts of resistance or disobedience. An elite like that looked terrified. She was running like crazy. She did not look like an Annihilation class elite. It was like a monster was chasing after her. You. Suddenly, the silver-haired old woman, Jochina, who was running forward, stopped. In front of her, there was a black-haired young man with dark green wings. He was quietly floating and looking at her. His eyes were very calm. His body did not have a scary presence, but it gave her a lot of pressure. Sweat kept rolling down her forehead. If you are here, then stay. Looking at the silver-haired old woman, Jochina, Gray's voice was calm. Combined with the fact that he had easily killed 2 Annihilation-class elites, there was an invisible, scary pressure. It made the silver-haired old woman, Jochina, unable to breathe. Don't kill me. I am willing to submit to you. I am willing to represent the Wagia family and submit to you. After seeing how powerful Gray was, the silver-haired old woman, Jochina, knew there was no way she could escape. She looked at Gray and felt humiliated. As an Annihilation-class elite, she stood at the top of the pyramid. She controlled the life and death of millions of people. One thought was enough to decide the life and death of a big family. She was used to being high and mighty and took it for granted. Now that she was forced to say words of submission, it was extremely humiliating for her. However, there was nothing she could do about it. Compared to her life, humiliation was not something she could not accept. If she could survive and work with other top families, she might be able to take revenge. There is no need. Gray shook his head indifferently. He could roughly guess what the other party was thinking. There was no way he would give them such an opportunity. The Wagia family has lost 2 Annihilation classes, but we still have a lot of power. If we can stay, we will be of use to you. The silver-haired old lady, Jochina, felt humiliated to be rejected, but still gritted her teeth and said, "Controlling the Wagia family is indeed very useful to me, but I have a better way." A strange smile appeared on Gray's face. The silver-haired old woman, Jochina, felt an inexplicable sense of fear. Eyes turned into sharp blades that attacked Gray, while she retreated continuously. Cloak. The sharp ice blade was blocked by an invisible barrier as expected. Not only that, The silver-haired old lady Jochina was horrified to discover that invisible barriers had appeared behind her and around her. She was already a bird trapped in a cage. That was the space barrier that Gray had set up when he was talking to her. Although Gray was confident that he could kill her one-on-one without using the space barrier cage, it was obvious that using the space barrier cage would save him a lot of trouble. This was the first time he had used the space cage in battle, but he already liked that way of fighting. There were no surprises. Just like how he killed the tall, skinny old man Felipe and the hunchbacked old man Jerome, Gray easily killed the silver-haired old lady. No matter how much the silver-haired old lady struggled, she was unable to escape the space cage. She could only be killed by Gray in her endless despair. Everyone had to pay the price for what they had done. Even an Annihilation class elite had to pay the price. If Gray's power was not enough to fight against the Wagia family, he would end up like the Wagia family's silver-haired old woman, Jochina. He would die in despair. He understood that, so he did not feel guilty about killing the Wagia family. Half an hour later, in a dense forest, the bodies of the Wagia family's 3 Annihilation class elites, 7 Magic Light warriors, and 1 King class warrior lay neatly on the ground. Mr. Gray, isn't a waste to use the resurrection power on them? Looking at the 11 bodies lying on the ground, Fod asked with a frown. The powers of the 11 of them were not the best in their respective realms. They could not use the resurrection power to its fullest potential. So, he did not understand Gray's plan. I have something I want to verify. Gray shook his head and did not explain further. He was not sure, so he needed to verify it. The bodies of the Wagia family members who had been killed were not the only ones that were intact. Only these 11 had been killed by him and Fod. He was not sure if the others were truly dead. Even if he saw the 11 of them, he would think that Gray and Fod had held back on purpose. The 11 of them were not completely dead. Walking next to the hunchbacked old man Jerome's body, Gray pressed his hand on the man's head. Buzz. There was an invisible buzzing sound. In the surrounding dense forest, a large amount of green light floated over. It wrapped around the hunchbacked old man Jerome's body, turning it into a green cocoon of light. The wound on the hunchbacked old man Jerome's chest was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was not just the external wound. Even the pierced heart was quickly healing. Dong, dong, dong. When all the wounds were healed, the old man's heart suddenly started beating. His eyelashes, which were almost empty, started to tremble. Finally, his eyes opened. Mr. Gray. Standing up, the hunchbacked old man Jerome respectfully bowed to Gray. He looked at Gray with fanaticism, like a fanatic. Now, he was the hunchbacked old man Jerome, but he was also not the hunchbacked old man Jerome. His body was still the same, but his soul was no longer the same. Gray nodded. He walked over to the skinny old man Felipe's body and did the same thing. Not long after, the skinny old man Felipe stood up as well. Then came the silver-haired old woman Jochina and the 2 Magic Light warriors. After reviving the 3 Annihilation elites and the 2 Magic Light warriors of the Vika family, Gray had revived 3 Annihilation elites for Magic Light elites and many others below Magic Light. Under normal circumstances, with the upper limit of his revival ability, he could not revive another Magic Light warrior. But he still walked over to the next Magic Light warrior's body and used his revival ability again. Buzz. The green light floated over again. The body of the Magic Light warrior was turned into a cocoon of light by the green light. The wounds on his body quickly healed, and his soul was quickly reborn. Pata! The wounds on his body were healed. The body of the Magic Light warrior trembled. He opened his eyes and stood up. This... Fod's expression turned to one of astonishment as he looked at the 3rd Magic Light warrior in astonishment. According to common sense, the revival ability of a Magic Light class should be able to revive 3 Annihilation elites and 5 Magic Light elites. Now, with this Magic Light warrior, the total number of people he could revive had exceeded the upper limit. He could not help but feel shocked. He quickly thought of the reason. He looked at Gray. Mr. Gray, is this the change after combining with super memory? It should be. I was not sure before, but now I am sure. After combining with super memory, The upper limit of the number of people I can revive has increased. Gray nodded. Super memory had been combined with the revival ability for a while, but Gray had never had the chance to test out what kind of change it had brought. Although he had some guesses through the blood pulse information, he was not sure. This time, the Wagia family had invaded and killed many elites of the Wagia family. He suddenly wanted to test out this guess. That was why he had been able to revive past the upper limit. His guess had been confirmed. After combining with super memory, the upper limit of the revival ability had increased. As for how much it had increased, he was not sure. Han's son kept using the revival ability. The 3 Annihilation Elites and 7 Magic Light class warriors had all been revived. Only the King class warrior had not been revived. It was the body of a brown-haired young man. He looked quite handsome. It was Miguel Wagia. Zap! Gray gently waved his hand. A black mist appeared. It wrapped around Miguel Wagia's body. His body was crushed by the black mist before Gray's eyes. Gray really hated this person. Plus, his king-class power was not very useful. So, Gray did not even want to give him a chance to revive. He just turned him into dust. You guys rest up and wait for my orders. After giving orders to the people who had been revived from the Wagia family, Gray looked at Fod. Let's go. It is time to take care of those people from the Leopold family. He grabbed Fod's shoulder and used his teleportation ability. When he appeared again, Gray brought Fod to where the Leopold family lived. This time, the Wagia family had attacked. There were many people in the Leopold family who had escaped. It was time to settle the score. Because there was a limit to his resurrection ability, Gray had only resurrected Fod from the Leopold clan. The others were all suppressed by his powerful strength. This time, the Wagia family had attacked. The Leopold family's higher-ups had escaped. It made him see the downside of using power to suppress them. Now, he knew the upper limit of the revival ability. He was not going to be nice to the few people who had escaped. He was going to turn them into obedient tools. Chapter 701. The Vega family lost. Not only did they suffer heavy casualties, but the rest of their people were also captured. They had to pay a huge price to get them back. A month later, the news of the battle between the Vega family and the Leopold family spread to all the families and even the Chaos Holy Palace. Of course, that was the news after the information was processed. The city was sealed, and the battle took place outside the city. The only people who saw the battle were the people from the Wagia family and the Leopold family. Moreover, the battle took place in the territory of the Leopold family, so it was easy for them to deal with the news. In the end, the news that was processed was that the Vega family had 3 Annihilation class elites and 20 Magic Light warriors to attack the Leopold family, but they could not defeat the Leopold family. They suffered heavy casualties, and the rest of their people were captured. The Vega family had to pay a huge price to get them back. In that fight, the Leopold family showed how powerful they were. Although they only had 1 Annihilation class elite, they had 3 legacy weapons. It was because of those 3 legacy weapons that the Leopold family was able to defeat the Wagia family, even though they were at a disadvantage. They were able to capture the remaining people of the Wagia family. After thinking about it, Gray decided not to expose his relationship with the Vega family. He wanted to use the Vega family as a spy that he had buried in the dark. At a critical moment, they could be used as an ambush. After that, if any family wanted to harm the Leopold family, they would have to contact the Vega family, who had suffered a great loss at the hands of the Leopold family. He believed that when the time came, they would be pleasantly surprised. I can't believe the Vega family lost. After hearing the news, the leaders of the various families were shocked. They asked someone to confirm that the news was correct. All the families that had been to Chaos City during the Trial Tower's opening knew about the conflict between the Leopold family and the Vega family. They also guessed that there would be a war between the 2 families. Now, their guesses had been confirmed, but the results shocked them. The Vega family, which was in the middle of the top families, had lost. The Leopold family, which was at the bottom of the top families, had won. The Leopold family hid their strength well. To be able to defeat the Vega family, their power is at least in the middle of the top families. Some of the leaders of the top family side. They did not expect the family that they had looked down on to be a top family would have such power. 3 legacy magic weapons. I never thought that the Leopold family would have such a foundation. Some of the upper echelons of the various top-tier families were filled with envy. A legacy magic weapon was the best indicator of a top-tier family's foundation. They had never imagined that the Leopold family's foundation would be so deep as to possess 3 such weapons. The Leopold clan actually won. In the study, Blanca Mandy, who was wearing a tight red dress that outlined her alluring curves, covered her red lips and looked at the news in front of her in surprise. Knowing that the Vega family might make a move against the Leopold family, she had once requested the family to help the Leopold family out of consideration for Gray Leopold's potential, but the family firmly refused. Her family had refused to help the Leopold family. She felt that the Leopold family's chances of winning were not high. She felt that it was a pity for Gray Leopold to be her ally. Other than her, George Lopez, and Landrine Gummo, the other party's strength was the strongest among the children of the top families. If he was not born in a family like the Leopold family, the other party's strength was not necessarily weaker than the 3 of them. It was a pity that such a potential ally candidate was going to fall early in the family war. She felt that it was a pity more than once. She did not expect the final result to be like this. The Leopold family won, and the Vega family lost. 3 legacy magic weapons. With such a foundation, it's no wonder he was so calm back then. She could not help but recall what had happened more than a month ago when they were waiting for the ruined ship. At that time, she had reminded Gray to be careful of the Vega family, but Gray's expression was very calm. She originally thought that the other party was pretending to be calm, but now it seemed that he was calm because he had confidence in his heart. The Leopold family defeated the Vega family and revealed 3 legacy magic weapons, which intimidated the various top-tier families. She believed that after this, the people of the various top-tier families would not be as arrogant as before when they met the people of the Leopold family. However, everything had its 2 sides. Although the Leopold family intimidated the various top-tier families, they also revealed an astonishing wealth that was enough to make people envious. They actually have 3 legacy magic weapons. The eyes of some of the top-tier families flashed with an inexplicable look. Even in the hands of an Annihilation class, an Inheritance class magic weapon was a magic weapon that could allow an Annihilation class being 1 level higher than it was. Even their family did not have 3 Inheritance class magic weapons. The Leopold family had 3 of them, which made them jealous. At the same time, they had an idea. 3 legacy magic weapons are in the hands of the Leopold family. It is a shame. Some of the top-tier families sighed. Only an Annihilation class demon weapon could unleash its full power in the hands of an Annihilation class elite. The Leopold family only had 1 Annihilation class elite, but they had 3 Inheritance class demon weapons. They could not unleash the full power of the 3 Inheritance class demon weapons. If the 3 legacy magic weapons were in the hands of their families, they would be able to use the full power of the 3 legacy magic weapons. They would not be as wasteful as the other party. 3 legacy magic weapons. If we can get them, the power of the Leopold family will increase greatly. The eyes of some of the upper echelons of the top clans were filled with a blazing light. 3 inherited magic weapons in the hands of the Leopold clan were like 3 priceless jewels in the hands of a poor clan. It was impossible to say that they were not moved. Many of the top-tier families looked at the Leopold family with passion, especially the few top-tier families who were at the top of the list. They thought they could beat the Leopold family and take the 3 legacy magic weapons. Their eyes were burning with passion. Some of the families were still watching. Some of the families had already started to move in secret. They sent spies to Leo City to gather information about the Leopold family. During this month, a formless commotion spread throughout the Chaos Lands. However, the Leopold family, who had caused this commotion, was extremely peaceful and harmonious. Gray used his resurrection power to control a few of the Leopold family's high-ranking members. It was difficult for the Leopold family to not be harmonious. With the addition of a medicinal ingredient, the medicinal liquid in the crystal pot reacted violently. Then, it suddenly emitted an unpleasant stench. Failed again. Gray shook his head and walked out of the potion, making room. He ordered the servants to clean up the room. During this month, he spent his time cultivating and learning how to refine pills. As expected, a level 2 potion maker was the limit he could reach in a short period of time. In the past month, his potion maker level had increased by 2 levels. He had reached level 2, but in the past month, he had not been able to increase his level. He could only make level 2 magic potions. Every time he tried to make level 3 magic potions, it would end in failure. Just now, he had tried to make level 3 magic potions and failed again. Lord Grey, the hunting team, has sent news. The 4th disaster level blood fiend has been found. Knowing that Grey had left the potion-making room, Kesha, who was wearing a white lace dress and revealing her snow-white skin, hurried over and reported to Grey. They found it? That's good. It's time to go out for a walk. Grey nodded slightly. It was not difficult to find disaster-level blood fiends in the Forbidden Forest. That was why the Forbidden Forest was so dangerous. The disaster-level blood fiends that Grey was looking for had special requirements. They had to be the kind of disaster-level blood fiends that were comparable to Annihilation-class blood fiends. Because of this, it took him more than 2 months to gather all the blood fiends. Now that he had mastered 1 disaster-level blood fiend, he only needed to kill 3 more disaster-level blood fiends. However, Grey wanted to see if the super memory ability had increased the upper limit of the number of disaster-level blood fiends he could control. That was why he was looking for 4 disaster-level blood fiends. The next day, Grey left for the Forbidden Forest. He did not bring many people with him. Other than Fod, there were only 2 magic light warriors with him. In the Forbidden Forest, even Annihilation-class elites could be in danger. Having too many people with him was not a good thing. Originally, he was going to go with Fod, but considering that he needed someone to take care of the logistics, he brought the 2 magic light warriors with him. The forest was so dense that one could not see the end of it. Everywhere one looked was green. The trees were so tall that they reached into the clouds. Many of them were hundreds of meters tall. Some of them were even hundreds of meters tall. The shadows cast by the giant trees were enough to block out everything within a few hundred meters. Roar! A blood fiend that was hiding under a tree noticed Grey and the others. It rushed toward Grey and the others. This was a tiger-shaped blood fiend. Its entire body was covered in white fur, and its body was more than 10 meters long. When it opened its mouth, a chilling cold air immediately froze the 4 of them, and ice quickly spread towards them. Grey and Fod did not attack. A blood fiend of this level was not worth their time. One of the 2 magic light warriors who had followed them here stepped forward and slashed vertically with his saber. Blue flames surged out and instantly disintegrated the cold air. The surging flames even enveloped the tiger-shaped blood fiend. The tiger-shaped blood fiend was roasted before it could even make a sound. Chapter 702. Splash! A giant waterfall fell from a height of a few thousand meters. The water vapor was strong, and from afar, it looked like a giant undulating veil. Under the illumination of the sun, rainbow-like halos would occasionally appear. It was like a rainbow-colored bridge over the waterfall. It was full of dreamy colors, and it was beautiful. A slight chill came from afar. Even on a hot summer day, it was abnormally cool. It was so comfortable that people could not help but want to take a nap. This was a beautiful scene created by nature's uncanny workmanship. Unfortunately, there were very few people who could truly appreciate this beautiful scene. This was because they had entered the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Even an Annihilation-class elite could be in danger, let alone a normal person. For normal people, this was a forbidden area. They would never have the chance to come to this place in their lifetime. So, this beautiful scene was destined to be seen by very few people. A few days later, Grey and the other 3 arrived. That bloodthirsty disaster ape should be nearby, Fod said as he took out a leather map and compared the terrain in front of them with the terrain on the leather map. After confirming their current location, he spoke. You and I will each take 1 person and search separately. With its size, it will be difficult for it not to leave behind any traces. It should be easy to find it. Grey nodded and made his decision. He decided to each take 1 person and search separately with Fod. Regardless of whether it was him or Fod, they both had the power to fight and kill a disaster-class blood fiend. So, they were not worried about being at a disadvantage if they encountered a disaster-class blood fiend. Furthermore, fighting would cause a huge commotion. When the two sides nearby heard the commotion, they would be able to quickly rush over. Furthermore, Gray and Fod could communicate from distance. Although they were too far away, they could only transmit some vague information. It was enough to notify them that a disaster-class blood fiend had been discovered. With a magic light warrior in tow, Gray walked down the river formed by the waterfall. This river was the water source for the creatures nearby. The bloodthirsty disaster ape would definitely go there to drink, so we should have left behind some traces. Master Gray, there is a giant footprint here. After marching down for about a kilometer, they quickly made a discovery. The magic light warrior, following Gray, suddenly looked at the riverside with narrowed eyes. There was a huge footprint there. Gray walked over and looked at the footprint. It was a giant footprint that was 4 or 5 meters long. Its shape was slightly similar to a human's footprint. It also had 5 toes, but it was different from a human's relatively short toes. Its 5 toes were very thick and long. Not only was there a single footprint, there was a series of similar footprints not far away. This should have been left behind by the bloodthirsty disaster ape. Gray made his judgment. Judging from the length of the footprints, the blood fiend that left the footprints should be over 30 meters tall. With such characteristics, and the fact that it appeared in the vicinity, it could only be the bloodthirsty calamity ape that he was looking for. But these footprints have been here for quite some time. It will be difficult to find the bloodthirsty calamity ape with these footprints. He had once dealt with the Demon Hound mercenary group, a mercenary group that specialized in searching. Moreover, he had learned some searching techniques from the mercenary group's leader. With the help of the searching techniques he had learned, Gray was able to determine that this footprint had been left behind for quite some time. It's better than nothing. Let's follow the footprints. In the end, Gray decided to try following the footprints. With the magic light warrior in tow, he followed the giant footprints. After searching for more than an hour, the results were not ideal. Because too much time had passed, some of the footprints had already disappeared. Halfway through, the thing he was worried about happened. The footprints had completely disappeared, and they had lost their trail. I wonder how Fod is doing. After searching the surroundings for a while, Gray could not find any new footprints. Unable to determine where the bloodthirsty calamity ape had gone, he could only give up. His trail had been cut off. Now he could only hope that Fod could find some clues and track down the bloodthirsty calamity ape. Rumble. Suddenly, a loud sound rang out like a clap of thunder. Many birds and beasts fled from their hiding places in fright, fleeing in the opposite direction in panic. The source of the sound should have been several kilometers away, but even so, such a loud sound could still be heard. One could only imagine how loud the commotion would be from several kilometers away. Rumble, rumble, rumble. There was not just one sound. Instead, it kept ringing out, accompanied by terrifying and majestic roars of beasts. Whoosh! Without hesitation, Gray quickly ran in the direction of the sound. To cause such a huge commotion, the two parties involved in the battle had to be extremely powerful. It was very likely that Fod had encountered the bloodthirsty calamity ape. Moreover, the communication from Fod in his mind also proved this point. Although he was too far away to understand what Fod was trying to convey, the fact that Fod was contacting him at this time was enough to explain the problem. Covered in a purple light, Gray transformed into a purple light and quickly flew in the direction of the sound. Having reached the 3rd level of magic light, after using the time rule to accelerate, his speed was even faster than the average annihilation grade. With his terrifying speed, he crossed the distance of several kilometers in less than a minute. He also saw the two parties involved in the battle. Unsurprisingly, one of them was Fod. At this time, Fod's right hand had transformed into a giant black blade that was several meters long. There were red flames burning on it. Under the red flames, large swaths of the surrounding area were burned to ashes. Some places had even turned into lakes of lava. On the other side was a giant ape that was more than 30 meters long. Its fur was blood red, as if it had been soaked in blood. It was the target Gray was looking for, the bloodthirsty calamity ape. The bloodthirsty calamity ape was a physical disaster-grade blood beast. Its strength was extremely powerful. Its physical strength alone was enough to fight against an annihilation-grade elite. Aside from that, it also had another physical ability, self-healing. With this ability, it had an extremely powerful self-healing ability. Its body's self-healing speed was even faster than someone who had taken high-grade healing potions. In the end, the first pharmacists had been inspired by the self-healing ability to create healing potions. As the original template for healing potions, it naturally had a terrifying recovery speed that surpassed healing potions. The bloodthirsty calamity ape's powerful strength and powerful healing abilities allowed it to fight in a frenzied manner. It did not hesitate to trade injuries for injuries. This was also the origin of its name, the bloodthirsty calamity ape. Roar. With a roar, the bloodthirsty calamity ape stomped on the ground. After countless cracks appeared on the ground, its body shot out. Its giant fist, which was longer than Fod's height, smashed toward Fod like a meteor falling from the sky. Whoosh! The giant blade that Fod's right hand had transformed and was wrapped in red flames as it met the bloodthirsty calamity ape's fist. Puff! A deep burn appeared on the bloodthirsty calamity ape's fist, but the ape did not care. Its other giant hand swept toward Fod from the side, creating a fierce hurricane. At the critical moment, Fod quickly retreated and dodged the giant hand. The bloodthirsty calamity ape roared angrily and pounced toward Fod once more. Its injured hand transformed into a giant fan and swatted at Fod. The wound that Fod had inflicted on its hand had already stopped bleeding, and the wound was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. What a fast recovery speed! Gray, who saw this from afar, was slightly surprised. Although he had read about the bloodthirsty calamity ape in books, a description was only a description. It could not compare to seeing it with his own eyes. Now that he had seen the bloodthirsty calamity ape's terrifying self-healing speed with his own eyes, he finally had a clear understanding of the bloodthirsty calamity ape's self-healing ability. Whoosh! Using his teleportation ability, Gray instantly appeared beside the bloodthirsty calamity ape and joined the siege. The sword in his hand was wrapped in dark green mist as he slashed at the bloodthirsty calamity ape's waist. Puff! A long bloody wound appeared on the bloodthirsty calamity ape's waist, and the blood that seeped out was slightly green. It had clearly been poisoned. Roar! After being wounded by Gray's sudden appearance, the bloodthirsty calamity ape, which had been fighting Fod in a frenzy, was enraged. It gave up on Fod and swung a fist at Gray. Pong! The result was as expected. Its fist smashed into an invisible barrier and could not move an inch forward. Even the hunchbacked old man Jerome, who used his inherited weapon and blood skill, could not break through the spatial barrier, let alone an opponent whose combat power was only comparable to an ordinary destruction grade. Pong! 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 The bloodthirsty calamity ape was clearly in front of it, but it could not touch the enemy. The bloodthirsty calamity ape was enraged, and its entire body went berserk. Its skin turned blood red, and its two hands became giant fists that repeatedly smashed at the invisible spatial barrier in front of Gray. Gray was unmoved. He calmly looked at the bloodthirsty calamity ape through the spatial barrier. Poison is useless. Under the effects of his powerful healing ability, the wound that Gray had inflicted on the bloodthirsty calamity ape's waist quickly healed. Gray also noticed that the wound, which had been stained with dark green blood, was now pure red. Clearly, the self-healing ability could not only heal wounds on the body, but also gave the ape a resistance to poison. It's time to end this. The bloodthirsty calamity ape was still relentlessly attacking the invisible barrier in front of Gray. Gray, however, reached out his left hand and grabbed at the bloodthirsty calamity ape. Then, the bloodthirsty calamity ape suddenly staggered, as if it had been hit by something invisible. Then, its two hands, which had been hammering at the invisible barrier, were fixed in a strange position. It could no longer move. Such a long time was naturally enough for Gray to set up a spatial barrier, trapping the bloodthirsty Calamity ape in a spatial cage. Puff! The several-meter-long, dark green longsword stabbed into the bloodthirsty Calamity ape's heart. Although it encountered a strong resistance, it still pierced through the bloodthirsty Calamity ape's heart. Chapter 703. Rumble. The bloodthirsty Calamity ape's 30-meter-tall body collapsed with a loud crash. It was as if a mountain had collapsed, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Even if it had the ability to heal itself, it wasn't immortal. It couldn't survive after its heart had been pierced. The bloodthirsty Calamity ape's life force was extremely tenacious. It struggled for a few moments before it finally died and turned into an ice-cold corpse. Without needing Gray's instructions, the two magic light warriors who had followed him quickly stepped forward to collect the blood. The bloodthirsty Calamity ape was a disaster-grade blood fiend, so its blood was naturally extremely valuable. Coupled with its rare ability to heal itself, its value was even higher. Self-healing ability. Staring at the bloodthirsty Calamity ape's corpse, Gray's eyes revealed a thoughtful expression. In terms of healing methods, he had the reverse nurturing ability derived from his wood element ability. This was a healing method that wasn't any weaker than his self-healing ability. It could even reconnect severed limbs. However, the reverse nurturing ability wasn't without its drawbacks. When using it, there had to be plants nearby. If there weren't any plants around, the ability would lose its effect. Seeing the bloodthirsty Calamity ape's powerful self-healing ability, he understood that the self-healing ability was more practical than the reverse nurturing ability in battle. He couldn't help but think of consuming the bloodthirsty Calamity ape's blood to obtain the ability. However, he was still a little hesitant. The two abilities clearly overlapped. Even though their mechanisms were different, their effects were the same. He was a little hesitant. Was it worth it to spend a chance to transform for this? Is it worth a chance to transform or not? In the end, Gray didn't make a decision immediately. He decided to think for a while before making a decision. After all, this wasn't something that needed to be decided in a hurry. The two magic light warriors had finished collecting the bloodthirsty Calamity ape's blood. Gray walked forward and began to use his ability to control corpses. The two magic light warriors were originally rather active members of the Leopold clan. Gray had killed them and resurrected them, so Gray didn't need to worry about using his ability in front of them. Clang! A few minutes later, the bloodthirsty Calamity ape stood up once more. It was over 30 meters tall, and just by standing there, it exuded a powerful aura of intimidation, as if it was alive. However, the clear wound on its chest showed that it was already dead. Even though this wound doesn't affect my combat ability, it's better to use the reverse nurturing ability to heal it. Gray was about to use his ability to heal the bloodthirsty Calamity ape's wound when the two magic light warriors suddenly cried out in surprise. Lord Gray, look at the Calamity ape's chest wound. What is it? Hearing the magic light warriors' cry of surprise, Gray looked in confusion at the wound on the bloodthirsty disaster ape's chest. In the next moment, however, he couldn't help but be stunned, a trace of surprise appearing in his eyes. The wound on the bloodthirsty Calamity ape's chest, which had stopped healing after its death, actually began to heal itself once more after being controlled by him with his corpse-controlling ability. It wasn't just the wound on his chest. Even the wounds on other parts of his body were rapidly recovering. The ability to heal itself even after death. Fod and the other magic light warrior couldn't help but stare in shock at the bloodthirsty Calamity ape, whose wounds were already healing, even though Gray hadn't used his reverse nurturing ability. Self-healing ability, physical ability. After a moment's thought, a look of understanding appeared on Gray's face. Self-healing was a physical ability that was attached to the physical body. It was an ability that didn't require blood energy to exist, so it wasn't hard to understand why it would still exist after death. Even though it was rather unexpected, it was still within reason. Moments later, without Gray using his reverse nurturing ability, the bloodthirsty calamity ape's wounds were completely healed. Even its heart was healed, and not a single wound could be seen. If its self-healing ability was just a little stronger, it might not have died even if its heart was pierced. Looking at the bloodthirsty calamity ape like this, Gray's eyes shone with a sharp light. The self-healing ability could even heal a wound in its heart, but the bloodthirsty calamity ape had still died. The reason was that the healing speed of its wounds was too slow. It hadn't been able to heal the wound in its heart before it died. This gave him some ideas. If the self-healing ability existed in an Annihilation class elite or a Rule class elite, would they not die even if their heart was pierced? If that was the case, such a person could be considered immortal. Of course, that was only to a certain extent. In Gray's imagination, a truly perfect immortal body would be one where one's heart and brain were destroyed and still be able to survive. Even if one's body was shattered, one could still be reborn. That kind of immortality was the most perfect kind of immortality in his imagination. He waved his hand and put the bloodthirsty calamity ape into the space he had opened. Even though the bloodthirsty calamity ape was 30 meters tall, it was unable to touch the top of the space. Every day, he used half of his blood power to open up the space. After such a long time, the space had reached a ridiculous size. It was 300 meters long, 200 meters wide, and 100 meters tall. Its volume was a ridiculous 6 million cubic meters. Even if it contained a few dozen disaster-class blood fiends, it would be able to fit them all. After some repairs, Gray and the others set off again. They went to the area marked on the map, where the second disaster-class blood fiend was active. 2 days later, they appeared in a mountain range that reached into the clouds. They also saw their target this time, the gold lion vulture. It was a giant beast that was covered in gold. It had the body and claws of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle. It could run on land and fly in the sky. It had two very powerful abilities. One of them was speed. It had wings. When it flew in the sky, it could explode with a speed that blood fiends of the same level could not compete with. It could use its speed to easily toy with blood fiends of the same level. The other ability was demonic sound. It could emit extremely destructive sound waves. Not only were these sound waves so destructive that they were invisible to the naked eye, but they were also all-pervasive and extremely difficult to defend against. Most of the time, its prey would be killed by its demonic sound before they could even react. However, it was destined to be completely subdued by Gray. In terms of speed, whether it was the acceleration ability of the time law or the teleportation ability of the space law, both were enough to allow Gray to be faster than the other party. In terms of attack, although the other party's demonic sound was all-pervasive, it could not do anything against an invisible space barrier. The space barrier formed by the space ability naturally had no holes. The demonic sound's attack could not touch Gray at all. Very soon, Gray killed it and turned it into his third disaster-level blood fiend, the Blood Fiend. Gray was very satisfied with this disaster-class blood fiend. Not only did it have the ability to fly, but it also had the ability to attack from a distance. That was what the current Corpse Control lacked. The Bramble Disaster Crocodile and the Bloodthirsty Disaster Ape's power was not weaker than an Annihilation class elites, but they did not have the ability to attack from a distance. Last time, the silver-haired old woman, Jochina, was flying through the air. The Bramble Disaster Crocodile could not do anything to her. The Gold Griffin somewhat compensated for this weakness. It would not be like last time, where the enemy was flying through the air and the blood fiends could only chase after the enemy on the ground. They could not do anything to the enemy. If he could, he wanted to change all of his blood fiend corpse control into one with the ability to fly. But blood fiends with destructive power and the ability to fly were not easy to find. The Leopold family's hunting team had spent 2 months searching for one. For days later, in the middle of a swamp, Gray and the other 3 found their third target. It was a giant python that was over 50 meters long. Its head was as big as a train, and its body was as long as a mountain. Its appearance alone was very intimidating. The black swamp python lived in the swamp. It was a blood fiend that had both defense and power. Its powerful strength allowed it to fight with any blood fiend, and its powerful defense allowed it to be unafraid of the attacks of other blood fiends. In addition, the swamp was the most suitable environment for it. Ordinary disaster-grade blood fiends were no match for it. Gray and Fod spent a lot of effort to kill it and turn it into their fourth disaster-class blood fiend. There are already 4 of them. According to my calculations, I should have reached the upper limit of my corpse control ability. Now let's see if I can surpass that limit. They did not go to the location of the 4th disaster-class blood fiend. The 4th disaster-class blood fiend was prepared for when the upper limit of their corpse control ability was increased. It was not necessary to go through so much trouble just to test if the upper limit of their corpse control ability was increased. The 4 of them searched nearby and soon found a magic light level crocodile blood fiend. After killing it, Gray used his corpse control ability, Patter. As the crocodile blood fiend stood up, Gray could clearly feel that one of the 4 disaster-class blood fiends he controlled had lost control. The results were out. The upper limit of his corpse control ability was not increased. His super memory ability should only affect his resurrection ability, not his corpse control ability. Gray did not need to test it to know that the upper limit of his ghost ability was not increased either. His super memory ability only affected his resurrection ability. His corpse control ability and ghost ability should not be affected. It seems that I don't need to kill the 4th disaster-class blood fiend. Gray shook his head regretfully. The ability to open up space, derived from the space ability, allowed him to have a huge portable space. If the upper limit of his corpse control ability was increased, then he would be able to bring a group of disaster-class blood fiends with him. He could not help but feel excited at the thought of having a group of disaster-class blood fiends with him. Unfortunately, he did not get what he wanted. The upper limit of his corpse control ability was not increased. He could only control 4 disaster-class blood fiends at most. What happened? Suddenly, Gray's expression changed. He felt Kinsa's call, and it was obvious that she was anxious. Could it be that another top family is attacking us? Gray's expression suddenly turned cold, and a layer of frost covered his face. During this period of time, the Leopold family was naturally aware of the spying from some of the top families. They also guessed that the other party was most likely after the legacy weapon. This made him wonder if the top families were taking advantage of his and Fod's absence to attack the Leopold family and steal the legacy magic weapon. Chapter 704. I like to see what kind of family it is. Gray's face was cold. Now he had 4 disaster-level blood fiends in his hands. His combat power had increased tremendously. Even if it was a top-tier family, he was not afraid. If they dared to attack, he would make them pay a heavy price. Whoosh! With Fod and 2 other magic light warriors, Gray teleported and disappeared from the Forbidden Forest. When he reappeared, he was in the courtyard of the Leopold family. But what surprised him was that there were no signs of fighting in Leopold City. There were no signs of destruction in his residence. It did not look like a top-tier family had attacked. Using his mental connection with Kensha, he quickly found her with Fod. She was unharmed and did not look like she had been in a fight. But there was a hint of anxiety on her face. "Why did you call me so urgently?" Gray frowned and looked at Kensha. The situation was very different for what he had guessed. It did not look like a top-tier family had attacked. But if it was not a top-tier family attacking, it made her so anxious. He could not figure it out. "Master Gray, there is a transfer order from the Chaos Holy Palace. Because it is too important, I had to inform you," Kensha said with a serious face. A transfer order from the Chaos Holy Palace? Gray was shocked. After he had taken control of the Leopold family, he had learned from Fod that the Chaos Holy Palace did not interfere with the top-tier families. Even if the top-tier families fought to the death, they would not interfere. But sometimes, they would send a transfer order to the top-tier families and forcibly recruit the elites of the top-tier families. Every time such a transfer order was sent, something big must have happened. The last transfer order was 300 years ago. The reason for the transfer order was that the Chaos Holy Palace had a conflict with the neighboring Eternal Holy Kingdom, and a full-scale war had broken out. The war between the 2 Saint-class forces was unprecedented. It was said that in that war, many Annihilation elites had died. Many top-tier families had declined because of it. The Leopold family had become a top-tier family 200 years ago. In fact, it was because of that war that the top-tier families in the area had declined that the Leopold family had the opportunity to rise to become a top-tier family. Now, there was a transfer order from the Chaos Holy Palace. It was not hard to imagine that something big must have happened. What's the transfer order about? Gray and Fod looked at each other and hurriedly inquired. A void hole has appeared in the Noah Plains in the Chaos region, and a large number of void beasts have invaded. The temple has ordered all the top families to send experts to kill them. Kinsa said with a solemn expression. Void disaster. Hearing Kinsa's words, Gray and Fod couldn't help but cry out in surprise, their expressions changing again and again. After coming to the Source World, Gray learned about the species of giant beasts with huge tentacles that could rapidly increase their strength by devouring life. They were called void beasts because they came from the endless void where there was nothing. The endless void, the void outside the origin world and the dimension, was a barren space where no plants or flesh could survive. The only thing that could exist was the void beast. With the special ability to devour life to grow, the void beasts had an extreme desire for life. Their desire for life made them constantly want to invade the source world and the dimension. However, regardless of whether it was the source world or the dimension, there was a world barrier or dimension barrier outside that could prevent the void beasts from invading. However, the world barrier wasn't always perfect. Sometimes, due to external or internal reasons, there would be a loophole. This loophole was called a void hole. The void beasts were extremely sensitive to the aura of life. As long as a void hole appeared, they could sense it even from a great distance. They would swarm towards the void hole and enter the source world or the dimension through the void hole. The disaster caused by this was called the void disaster. Although I've heard of the void disaster, I've never encountered one. I didn't expect it to appear in the Chaos region this time. Fod said with a solemn expression. To be able to cause the Chaos Holy Palace to issue a transfer order, there must be a lot of void beasts invading this time. Indeed, there should be a lot of them. However, it's because of this that the harvest is huge. Although the void disaster this time is dangerous, it's also an opportunity. Gray's brows furrowed slightly, and then they relaxed again. He already had a plan in mind. The void disaster was indeed dangerous, but the benefits it brought were also huge. Every void beast had a crystal core in its body. The more powerful the void beast, the larger the crystal core in its body. Gray had a deep understanding of the crystal core's function. It could assist in cultivation and increase the speed of cultivation. Furthermore, it would not overlap with cultivation medicine. It could be said that it was an excellent cultivation resource to increase one's strength. However, this kind of resource was not easy to obtain. It could only be obtained when the void disaster occurred. If he missed this opportunity, even if he wanted to obtain it, there would be no place for him to hunt the void beasts. Therefore, he decided to let the Leopold clan and the Vega clan send most of their clan's experts to hunt the void beasts. He even planned to hunt the void beasts himself. Although the void disaster this time was dangerous, he wasn't worried about his own safety. With the space barrier, teleportation, and many other techniques, he was quite confident in his ability to protect himself. On the second day, Gray, Fod, and the 7 magic light warriors of the Leopold clan left Leo City and headed towards the Noah Plains. Thump, thump, thump. In the wilderness, a lizard-like dragon beast with a body length of more than 20 meters was running. It emitted a dull drum-like sound. On its back, there were 9 people who were either standing or lying down. They were fixed on the dragon beast like boulders. The beast and the 9 people sometimes passed by the village and sometimes by the city, causing a commotion. It was only when they saw the people on the giant beast that the commotion stopped. Instead, they looked at the 9 people on the giant beast with reverence. These 9 people were the 9 people of the Leopold clan, including Gray. As a top clan, the Leopold clan also had their own battle beast. Although it wasn't as flashy as a bird-type battle beast, it was still a magic light-level dragon beast. Naturally, They didn't need to rely on their 2 legs to hurry on their way to the Noah Plains. A few days later, an endless plain appeared in front of Gray and the others. This was the destination of Gray and the others, the Noah Plains. There's a city over there. After several days of continuous travel, Gray and the others were a little tired. When they saw a city on the horizon in the distance, they decided to enter the city to rest, so they drove the dragon beast in that direction. However, when they were about to approach the city, Gray and the others couldn't help but have a slight change in their expressions. There was indeed a city in front, but it was a dilapidated city. Most of the city walls had collapsed, and many of the buildings in the city had also collapsed. Even when they were close, there was still no one in the city. It was obvious that this was a dead city where no one existed. However, judging from the fact that there were no plants growing wildly around and inside the city, this city should have been abandoned not long ago, maybe not even more than a month. Could it be? Gray and the others already had some guesses in their hearts. They jumped off the back of the dragon beast and walked into the city through the gap in the city wall. Sure enough, seeing the situation in the city, Gray could not help but narrow his eyes, and he clenched his fists. In the city, on the streets, among the ruins, corpses could be seen everywhere. These corpses were abnormally black, as if they had lost all their water and appeared very shriveled. Gray, who had seen creatures killed by the void beast, recognized at a glance that these people had definitely died after being sucked dry by the void beast. It was obvious that this was a city that had been attacked by the void beast. This city was not considered big, but there should be more than 100,000 residents. It was unknown how many people had escaped in the end. After searching the city, they did not find any traces of the void beast. The void beast had already left, so Gray and the others retreated from the city and decided to set up tents outside the city to rest. Although they were not afraid of a city full of corpses, they were unwilling to rest in such an oppressive environment. Therefore, they decided to set up tents outside the city. At dusk, the setting sun was as red as blood. The world was silent, and even the sounds of birds and beasts could not be heard. It was as if they were silently mourning for the city that had suffered. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind broke the silence. In the sky, a small ruined ship could be seen flying quickly. Many people could be seen on the deck of the ruined ship. Such a commotion naturally alarmed Gray and the others. Gray and the others stood up and looked at the ruined ship and the people on the deck of the ruined ship. These people exuded a powerful aura, and their strength was clearly not weak. On the side of the ruined ship, there was a symbol that looked like a clan emblem. It was a giant bird with a crown. It's the Urga's clan. Seeing this clan emblem, Fod's expression changed slightly. Gray said softly. Hearing the name of this clan, Gray could not help but change his expression. The Urga's clan was one of the top clans among the top clans. It was a clan that was even more powerful than the Waika clan. Of course, this was not the reason why his and Fod's expressions changed slightly. The real reason was that there were people from this clan among the spies that were caught infiltrating Leo City. From the fact that this clan had sent spies to infiltrate Leo City, it was obvious that this clan had some thoughts about the Leopold clan. It was very likely that they were up to no good. When Fod identified these people through the clan emblem on the side of the ruined ship, these people also identified Gray and the others through the clan emblem on their clothes. One of them looked extremely young, but his eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life. He looked at Gray and the others, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. The Leopold clan is really lucky. Chapter 705. The ruined ship landed on the ground. There were 30 people disembarking from the ruined ship. After they disembarked, they all looked at Gray and the others. Some of them looked like they were joking. Some of them looked cold. Some of them had their hands in their pockets. They looked cold. Without exception, all of them had a dangerous aura emanating from their bodies, which unscrupulously enveloped Gray and the other 8. 6 of them had the most terrifying auras. Facing the other party's auras was like facing an endless ocean. The 7 demonic light warriors from the Leopold clan could not help but sweat slightly on their foreheads. It is no wonder they are one of the top families. They have 6 Annihilation class elites. Gray's gaze swept over the 6 people. His expression did not change, but he could not help but sigh in his heart. Judging by their presence, the 6 of them were all Annihilation class elites. One family had 6 Annihilation class elites, and it was possible that not all of them were in the family. One could imagine how powerful the Urgash family was. Compared to the Wajia family, the Urgash family was much stronger. However, this kind of power was not enough to scare him. In terms of Annihilation class combat power, he, Fod, and the 4 Disaster class Blood Beasts were no less than the enemy. Plus, he could give Fod and the 4 Disaster class Blood Beasts alloy power. They had super strong defense. If they really fought, they would not be at a disadvantage. So, he was not afraid. Josh, what is the Urga's family doing? Knowing the power of his side, Fod was very confident. He stepped forward and looked at the man who looked young but looked very old. What do you mean? The corners of the mouth of the young man, Joshua, curled up slightly. His gaze toward Fod carried a trace of contempt and disdain. What do you think it means? I think the Urga's family is going to declare war on the Leopold family. Can I take this as a declaration of war on the Leopold family? Fod's face was cold. He looked at the young man, Josh, with cold eyes. Declaration of war? The young man Joshua's smile widened, while the auras of the other members of the Urga's family became even more intense. Many of their gazes had already locked on a Gray's group of 9. Who? The sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. Just before the sun was about to set, another rune ship rapidly approached with the last ray of light. Looking at the runic ship that was rapidly approaching them, the pupils of the young man, Joshua, shrunk. Then, the corners of his mouth turned into a brilliant smile. How could that be? We were all recruited by the Chaos Temple and have the same goal. How could we fight each other? As the young man Joshua spoke, the young man Joshua and the people of the Yuga's clan behind him retracted their auras as if they had never appeared. The gazes that were locked on a Gray's group of 9 also moved away. In the blink of an eye, the tense atmosphere was gone. The 2 sides distanced themselves from each other and began to set up their own tents and fires. Gray shifted his gaze away from the Yuga's family and looked at the runic ship that was already descending from the sky. The reason why the Yuga's family changed their mind was naturally because of this runic ship. On the side of the runic ship, there was a symbol of a golden flower. This was the symbol of the Manti family. The people who came were from the Manti family. The Manti family was the family that Blanca Manti belonged to. It was one of the 3 most powerful families among the top families. The Yuga's family should be afraid that the Manti family would reap the benefits, so they gave up on attacking them. As the runic ship descended, more than 50 people walked down from it. There was no powerful presence, but it made the expressions of Gray's group of 9 and the 30 people of the Yuga's family turn solemn. There was no need to prove the strength of the Manti family. Among the 50 people, Gray noticed a young woman with brown hair at a glance. She was wearing a blue female battle dress that accentuated her perfect figure. Her brown hair was tied into a ponytail, and there was a beautifully decorated sword hanging at her waist. She was valiant and very eye-catching. This person was Blanca Manti. A beautiful woman would be beautiful no matter what she wore. A woman who was beautiful and wore clothes that accentuated her beauty was undoubtedly more beautiful. When Gray noticed Blanca Manti also noticed Gray. She walked up gracefully and smiled at Gray. I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Yes, I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Gray couldn't help but smile. The Manti family and the Leopold family were far apart. Unless there was another big event like the opening of the training tower, it would be very difficult for them to meet again. He didn't expect that the 2 of them would meet again after only 2 months. The world was unpredictable, and this was probably what it meant to be unpredictable. This time, we're no longer competitors. We need to work together. It's a pleasure to work together. Blanca Manti winked at Gray playfully and extended her snow-white, slender hand to Gray. It's a pleasure to work together. Gray reached out and shook her hand. It was soft as if there were no bones. It was very comfortable to touch. Do you mind taking a walk around? Blanca Manti asked Gray as she looked at the grass in the distance that was constantly swaying left and right in the breeze. Please. Gray bowed slightly and made a gesture of invitation. They walked towards the grass in the distance. The Leopold family and the Manti family really do have some connections. Looking at the two people chatting happily, the young man from the Yugas family, Joss, frowned slightly and a trace of fear appeared in his heart. He couldn't tell how deep the relationship between the Manti family and the Leopold family was. If it was just a normal relationship, then it would be fine. If they were close, then attacking the Leopold family would definitely cause the Manti family to be angry. Even the Yugas family, which was ranked at the top of the top families, wouldn't dare to directly face the anger of the Manti family. The three strongest families among the top families weren't as simple as it seemed. They had powerful strength as their foundation. Thank you. When they arrived at the meadow, Gray expressed his gratitude. He could naturally see that Blanca Mandy was helping the Leopold family out of their predicament. Her goal was to make the Yugas family wary of the Leopold family, so that they wouldn't dare to attack the Leopold family. Although he didn't really need it, the strength of the Leopold family was not weaker than that of the Yugas family. However, he was still very grateful for her kindness. No need. Blanca Manti shook her head slightly. But you have to be careful. The Yugas family won't give up. The next day, the Leopold family, the Yugas family, and the Manti family, who had rested for the night, set off respectively towards the depths of the Noah Plains. In the depths of the Noah Plains, there was a huge city. It was the city where the top family, the Sid family, was located. It was also the place where the Chaos Temple ordered them to meet. After rushing for half a day, Gray and the other 8 arrived at the city. It was a very large city with a permanent population of millions. It was even larger than Leo's city. There were many traces of battle outside the city. Many of the traces were abnormally ferocious. It was obvious that it was a destructive collision. However, the city had not fallen. After all, it was a city operated by a top family. Naturally, it would not be easy to break through. Of course, guarding the city was the limit of what the Simon family could do. Along the way, Gray saw several cities that had been destroyed by the void beasts. The Simon family only had the strength to defend and did not have the strength to spare to rescue other cities. The moment they entered the city, all they could see were refugees. Many refugees poured into the city, causing the city to be almost overcrowded. The corners of the walls, the streets, the open space in front of the shops. Wherever there was an empty space, the refugees could be seen. There were mothers with children, lonely old people, and siblings who depended on each other for survival. They were either lying down or sitting. All of them looked haggard, and their eyes were filled with confusion about the future. They had fled in a hurry and did not bring any money or supplies. Although they did not die at the hands of the void beasts, they were now facing hunger and cold. They might even die from hunger and cold. Fortunately, it was summer now. The weather was hot, and even the night was warmer. Furthermore, there were people wearing the robes of the Chaos Temple in the city distributing food, warm clothes, and blankets so that they would not freeze or starve to death. This way, please. As a top family that came to provide support, Gray and the other 8 were led to the Simon family's mansion by the Simon family's receptionist. Walking in the mansion, Gray could see some familiar figures from time to time. They were the people from some of the top families that he had seen in Chaos City previously. In front, a group of people walked towards them. It was a group of young people wearing the Chaos Temple's insignia with countless lines twisted together. They should be the disciples of the Chaos Temple. Among the young people, there was a silver-haired young man who was vaguely in the center. The young man had a medium build and regular facial features, but he could not be considered handsome. Apart from his striking silver hair, he was a man who did not stand out in other aspects. However, Gray noticed that among the young people surrounding the silver-haired young man, there are the elite disciples of the Chaos Temple who had entered the trial tower previously. Even that core disciple called Julio was among them. To be able to make a core disciple like Julio serve as a foil, this silver-haired young man's identity must be extraordinary. Gray already had a vague guess about his identity. In the Chaos Temple, there was only one person who could receive such treatment. Fod's soft introduction further proved this point. That's the Chaos Holy Son, Alger. Just as Gray had guessed, the other party was the Chaos Holy Son of the Chaos Temple. He was the person who had left behind the shocking record of reaching level 30 of the Trial Tower 5 years ago. He was the leader of the younger generation of the Chaos Temple. Only such a person could make a proud person like Julio serve as a foil willingly. Chapter 706. After the two sides nodded politely, they walked past each other. As for Gray, the Chaos Saint and the others naturally did not pay much attention to him. As the elites of the younger generation of the Chaos Temple, only the children of the three most powerful families could attract their attention. The children of the other families were not even worth their attention. They indeed had the qualifications to be sent by the Chaos Temple to kill the Void Beasts. Their power should be at least at the magic light level. Among the younger generation of the top families, only the children of the three most powerful families could compete with them. Aside from the special case of Gray, only the children of the three most powerful families could do so. A few days later, the people of the top families arrived one after another. The people of the Vega family had also arrived. The hunchbacked old man Jerome, the tall and skinny old man Felipe, and the silver-haired old woman Jochina, the three Annihilation grade, had all arrived. Including the three of them and the 4 disaster-level blood beasts, Gray's side had 9 Annihilation grade combat power. Whether it was the Vega family or the Leopold family, they were all under Gray's control. However, in front of outsiders, they would not appear too close. For a few days, whenever the people of the two families met, there would be some verbal conflicts. They were like fire and water. Seeing the two families like fire and water, many families who had designs on the Leopold family's inherited weapon secretly contacted the Vega family. They vaguely mentioned that they wanted to work together to deal with the Leopold family. Among them, Gray and the others had encountered the Urgas family, who had almost fought with them, and they were the most proactive. Your Excellency Jerome, what do you think? Do you want to work with the Urgas family to get rid of the Leopold family? Joshua, who looked like a young man, looked at Jerome and asked, "What can the Vega family get if we work with you?" Jerome did not answer. Instead, he asked, "Isn't it enough to get rid of the Leopold family?" Joshua, who looked like a young man, frowned slightly. The reason he wanted to work with the Vega family was because of the hatred the Vega family had for the Leopold family. With the motivation of hatred, the Vega family would agree without hesitation if there was a chance to get rid of the Leopold family, even if there was no reward. However, the current situation was contrary to his expectations. The Vega family didn't seem to be satisfied with just getting rid of the Leopold family. They also wanted to get a share of the benefits. That's not enough. The value of the Leopold family's 3 heritage weapons goes without saying. If the Urgas family wants to monopolize them, they're too generous. Jerome shook his head. My Wagia family does indeed have enmity with the Leopold family. However, if the Urgas family thinks that with only this enmity, the Wagia family will disregard everything to destroy the Leopold family, then you're underestimating my Wagia family too much. Then what do you want? The young man, Joshua, frowned. Among the 3 legacy weapons, my Jia family wants to pick one. Jerome said, a legacy weapon? Shouldn't your Wagia clan be the one with a generous heart? With this price, I believe that many families would be willing to cooperate. Why should I look for your Wagia family? The young man, Joshua, said in a dissatisfied tone. Facing the dissatisfied young man, Joshua, the hunchbacked old man, Jerome's expression didn't change. He picked up the teacup and took a sip before slowly saying, "But you can't guarantee that these families won't stab you in the back and join forces with the Leopold family to plot against the Urgas family. Only my Wagia family, who has a deep grudge with the Leopold family, can guarantee this." The young man, Joshua, retracted his dissatisfaction. Jerome said what he was really worried about. This was also the reason why he looked for the Wagia family. Originally, with the strength of the Urgas family, it shouldn't be a problem to snatch the Leopold family's heritage weapons with their own strength. However, after seeing that the relationship between the Leopold family and the Manti family wasn't normal, it made him hesitate. If he couldn't kill all the people of the Leopold family and let some of them escape, it might attract the anger of the Manti family. In order to ensure that nothing goes wrong, he decided to join forces with other families. As for the Manti family's suspicions, even if the Leopold family was destroyed, he wasn't too worried. For the Leopold family's heritage weapons, there were many families that wanted it. Even the Manti family couldn't make a move against every family that had suspicions. In the end, this matter would be left unsettled. Deal. The young man, Joshua, extended his hand to the hunchbacked old man, Jerome. Happy cooperation. The hunchbacked old man, Jerome, had a cold smile on his face as he shook hands with the young man, Joshua. Then I'll take my leave. As for the details of the operation, we'll discuss it later. The young man, Joshua, got up and left. After he left, a person walked out from a side room and sat in his original seat. The hunchbacked old man, Jerome, immediately stood up and bowed respectfully. This was a black-haired young man with a pair of eyes as deep as the sky. It was Gray. The Urgas family. With a cold laugh, Gray's figure disappeared from the chair and appeared in the Leopold family's residence that the Simon family had arranged. No one knew that he had left. All the top families had arrived, and the Chaos Temple quickly issued the order to wipe them out. The Void Beasts were improving every moment. With every day that passed, the Void Beasts would become stronger, and the damage to the Chaos territory would be more severe. If it wasn't for the fact that they needed a large number of people to act together to ensure that no Void Beasts escaped, the Chaos Temple would have issued the order to wipe out the top families that had arrived first. According to the Chaos Temple's order, the Noah Plains was divided into dozens of regions. Every top family was responsible for wiping out a region. They were required to go back and forth between the regions that their family was responsible for to ensure that no Void Beast survived. The Void Beast's ability to devour life to grow was too dangerous. Not a single Void Beast could be allowed to escape. Otherwise, it would be a terrifying disaster. In history, there have been cases of Void Beasts invading without being discovered. In the end, they had grown to the point where their combat power was comparable to the Maxim level. If it really reached that stage, even the Chaos Temple would find it troublesome. Upon receiving the order, the various families left the Simon family city. Among them, the Urgas family glanced coldly at the Leopold family before rushing to the region that their family was responsible for. Just last night, the Urgas family had discussed the specific details of the operation with the Vika family. The time was set to be 3 days later. At that time, the two families would quietly leave the regions that they were responsible for and rush to the region that the Leopold family was responsible for to kill the Leopold family. After leaving the Simon family city, Gray's group of 9 set off towards the south. The Chaos Temple had arranged for the Leopold family to be in charge of the south. It was an area that was more than 1,000 miles away from the Simon family city and had a diameter of more than 100 miles. Swish, swish, swish. Instead of riding on a dragon beast, Gray's group of 9 flew in the sky at their own speed. After more than an hour, they arrived at this area. This was a hilly area where low hills could be seen everywhere. Although the Noah Plains were called plains, it did not mean that there were no other terrains. It could only be said that plains were the majority of the terrains. Let's split up and search. If there's anything that we can't handle, release runic bombs. An area of 100 miles was neither big nor small. If they moved together, it would be too troublesome. Thus, Gray decided to split up. The runic bomb was an emergency rescue method. It was a rune item that could release an eye-catching red light in the sky for a long time. As long as the terrain was not too steep, it could be seen even from dozens of miles away. Moreover, this rune item could be reused. Swish! A pair of greenish-black wings sprouted from his back. Gray flew slowly at a low altitude. His gaze swept across the ground, paying attention to the plants and animals on the ground. Since he had dealt with Void Beasts before, he naturally knew how to find them. Found it. After flying for more than 30 miles, Gray made a discovery. He landed on a hillside. On the hillside, there were many pitch-black plants. The leaves of these plants were completely withered, and their bodies were covered in black spots, as if they had contracted some strange disease. He reached out and squeezed lightly. The plants seemed to have decayed, and were easily crushed into ashes. He was certain that this was the work of a void beast. With this pitch-black hillside as the center, Gray quickly found his target. It was a strange-looking giant beast made of red mist. Its body was more than 20 meters long, and it had the 4 limbs of an ordinary animal. However, where its head should have been, it was replaced by many tentacles. In the center of the tentacles was a ferocious-looking giant mouth. At this moment, red mist was being spat out from this ferocious-looking giant mouth. As the red mist was being spat out, the leaves of the various plants in the surrounding area, which were originally full of vitality, withered, and their branches turned pitch black. Although its appearance was completely different from the giant octopus-like beast that they had encountered previously, and the mist it was spitting out was red instead of black, it was obvious that it was also a void beast. It was just a different species. Swish! While flying in the air, a green wind blade shot out from Gray's fingertips and slashed toward the void beast. The void beast sensed the danger and quickly dodged. However, it was still unable to avoid this extremely swift wind blade. Poof! The green wind blade struck the side of the void beast's waist, and almost half of its body was split open. However, despite suffering such a heavy injury, the void beast did not show any signs of being seriously injured. Its running was not affected, and the wounds on its body were rapidly healing. Its giant mouth even shot out a red beam of light toward Gray. Gray was not surprised by this. In front of him, wind blade after wind blade slashed out, tearing apart the incoming red beam of light and slashing at the void beast's body. Under the violent wind blade, the void beast's body became tattered in an instant, and it was completely motionless. This was a magic light level void beast. In the past, to kill a void beast like this, Gray had to borrow the power of the spirit to attack at night. Now, he could easily do it. Chapter 707. Ding! The red, foggy body of the void beast slowly dissipated until it completely disappeared. A red polygonal crystal fell to the ground. It was slightly bigger than a marble. This was the crystal core of the void beast. Gray walked forward and collected the crystal core. He placed it close to his body. Suddenly, a familiar cool feeling entered his body and strengthened it. Although the color was different from the black crystal core that he had used before, it obviously had the same effect of aiding cultivation. After leaving this place, Gray continued his search. After flying for a few dozen miles, he found something again. He found a green, foggy void beast that looked like a giant python. Where its head should have been, there was no head. There was only a mouth and many tentacles. This void beast was much stronger than the first one. It was comparable to the 5th level of magic light. However, encountering Gray was destined to be its misfortune. Gray killed it without much effort. He continued his search, but he did not encounter any more void beasts. Seeing that he was about to leave the hilly area and enter the area that the other families were in charge of, Gray stopped and rested at the top of a small mountain. The wind at the top of the mountain was strong. A cool breeze blew on Gray's body, taking away the heat of summer. If there was a cup of freshly squeezed fruit juice with ice, it would definitely be a pleasure. Unfortunately, there was no freshly squeezed fruit juice. Gray could only take out a water bag from a space item and drink it after cooling it with his ice ability. Whoosh! Suddenly, a red light shot into the sky. It was like a giant stone pillar that condensed in the sky and did not dissipate for a long time. Gray's expression immediately froze. He put away the water bag and quickly teleported in that direction. The red light was naturally the light emitted by the rune bomb. It was a signal for help. Someone must have encountered danger. Annihilation grade. A middle-aged woman quickly retreated with cold sweat on her forehead. A giant beast made of black fog was chasing after her. The distance between them was quickly closing. The giant beast body was over 50 meters long. It was much larger than most of the disaster-grade blood beasts. There was a terrifying aura emanating from its body. The terrifying aura suppressed the middle-aged woman to the point that she could not breathe properly. The middle-aged woman hurriedly retreated in the air. The giant beast was also flying in the air. No, to be precise, it was swimming in the air. The giant beast looked like a fish. It had a fish tail and fins, but many parts of its body had thick tentacles. These tentacles, fish tail, and fins swayed in the air as if they were swimming in the air. Pucci, a thick and long tentacle lashed down. The middle-aged woman hurriedly dodged, barely dodging it. The thick tentacle lashed onto a short mountain, instantly splitting it into two halves, stirring up a large amount of dust. Swish, swish, swish. After several consecutive attacks, the fish-shaped giant beast seemed to be enraged when it failed to hit the middle-aged man. It opened its huge mouth and shot a thick black beam of light at the middle-aged woman. The beam of light was extremely thick and fast. Moreover, it covered a large area, making it impossible for the middle-aged woman to dodge. Seeing the black pillar of light coming toward her, she felt the scary power of the black pillar of light. The middle-aged woman's face turned pale. She felt hopeless. So, just as the black pillar of light was about to hit the middle-aged woman, Gray's body suddenly appeared in front of the middle-aged woman. An invisible space shield was set up. The acceleration of time rule powers and the teleportation of space rule powers had the ability to increase movement speed. If there was a need to talk about which power was faster, it would be teleportation. Not to mention the fact that if he had been to a place before, teleportation would be faster than time rule powers. Even if he had never been to a place before, teleportation was faster than the acceleration of time rule powers. He could teleport to a place where he could see. He could teleport to a place where he could see. That speed was faster than the acceleration of time rule powers. Of course, the acceleration of time rule powers was not without its advantages. The teleportation of space rule powers required time. If he was moving a short distance, the acceleration of time rule powers would be faster. Pang! The invisible space shield was extremely sturdy. Gray had yet to see what its limit was. The black pillar of light hit the invisible space shield. After a dull thud, it disappeared. Gray and the middle-aged woman, who were behind the space shield, were not hurt. Mr. Gray, seeing that Gray had saved her, the middle-aged woman's eyes were filled with gratitude and respect. She respectfully greeted Gray. She was not someone Gray had controlled with his resurrection power. She was someone who had been suppressed by Gray's absolute power. Earlier, Gray had displayed his movement skills and how he had easily blocked an Annihilation class attack. That had deepened her respect for Gray. Gray nodded coldly. His eyes were filled with interest as he looked at the fish-shaped beast. This was the first time he had encountered an Annihilation class void beast. He did not know how long the crystal core of a void beast like this could be used. He also did not know how much improvement it would give him after using it. Shwa, 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 shwa. The attack was blocked, and a new enemy appeared. As the fish-shaped beast quickly swam toward them, it shot out a few thick black beams of light. They attacked Gray, the new enemy. Pang, pang, pang. As expected, all the thick black beams of light were blocked by the invisible space shield. Gray's clothes were not even ruffled by the wind. Screech. The attacks were blocked one after another. The fish-shaped beast let out an angry roar. It exuded an aura that made people's hearts tremble. Shwa! From its giant mouth, another thick beam of light shot out. This time, the beam of light was pure black. It was so black that it looked like it could swallow light. Its power was obviously stronger than the previous beams of light. When angry, people could explode with power that was beyond their usual level. When the fish-shaped beast was angry, it also exploded with power that was beyond its usual level. Pang! As expected, even if it exploded with power that was beyond its usual level, it was still easily blocked by the space shield. At this time, the fish-shaped beast finally arrived in front of Gray. Dozens of tentacles covered the sky as they whipped toward Gray. Oomph! Gray let out a cold snort, allowing the dozens of tentacles to hit the space barrier in vain. He quickly constructed one space barrier after another around the fish-shaped behemoth, forming a space cage. The space cage was quickly constructed. The fish-shaped beast was already trapped in the space cage. However, with the fish-shaped beast's intelligence, it obviously did not realize this and continued to attack the space shield in front of Gray. Bang! Gray clenched his right hand slightly. The space cage's volume suddenly shrunk rapidly. The fish-shaped beast finally realized that it was trapped. It immediately struggled violently. The black beams of light shot out continuously, but it was all in vain. In the end, the fish-shaped beast was stuck in the space cage and could not move. This size, it's a little troublesome. Moreover, the void beast has no vital points. How do I kill it? Looking at the void beast that was more than 50 meters long trapped in the space cage, Gray held his chin with one hand. His method of killing a disaster-level blood beast was to trap it in the space cage. Then he would stab the blood beast's heart, causing it to die from having its heart pierced. However, the void beast clearly did not have an organ like a heart. It did not even have a brain. Therefore, using this method would not work. Moreover, the void beast's vitality was extremely tenacious. Only by severely damaging its body could it be killed. This method was a little strenuous. I can give that method a try. A smile appeared at the corner of Gray's mouth. He thought a method that he had always wanted to try, but never had the chance to. He looked at the space cage and continued to use his space ability to shrink the space cage. As the space cage shrunk, the fish-shaped beast's body was crazily squeezed. Its tentacles, tail, and fins were crushed beyond recognition. The fish-shaped beast's body was clearly deformed. Finally, when its volume had shrunk to a certain point, the deformation reached its limit. Poochie, the fish-shaped beast's body exploded. Its entire body collapsed and turned into countless pieces of minced meat. It was difficult to distinguish where the body was and where the tail was. This was an extremely horrifying scene. Its entire body had exploded and everything had turned into minced meat. It had turned into something that could not be distinguished by the naked eye. Fortunately, it was the fish-shaped beast that had exploded. If it had been a creature of flesh and blood, it would have been even more horrifying. As expected, I guessed correctly. The space cage doesn't only have the ability to trap enemies. Seeing the fish-shaped beast that had been squeezed into minced meat by the space barrier, Gray's heart flashed with the realization that he had guessed correctly. When he first used the space barrier ability to form a cage to trap enemies, he already had this idea. He thought that it would be an extremely powerful attack. Just now, the fish-shaped beast that had been squeezed and exploded proved this point. The space cage did not only have the ability to trap enemies, but it also had the ability to attack. Moreover, it could produce an extremely terrifying squeezing force. It was extremely powerful. Exploding the body of an annihilation-grade void beast was the best proof. So strong. Behind Gray, the middle-aged woman was shocked as she watched Gray easily trap the fish-shaped beast. Then, he easily squeezed the fish-shaped beast into minced meat. Beyond her eyes grew. If he could easily deal with the fish-shaped beast, he could easily deal with an annihilation-grade elite. His power was not as simple as a normal annihilation-grade elite. Although he had enslaved the Leopold family and turned the Leopold family into his own tool, it was not necessarily a bad thing for the Leopold family. This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Even the top families could be destroyed. Only by becoming stronger could they survive. If they could not become stronger, then they had to find a strong backer. This was another way to survive in a world where the strong preyed on the weak. His opponent was obviously such a strong backer. Chapter 708. The minced meat of the fish-shaped beast slowly disappeared, and only a black crystal core was left. The crystal core was the size of a ping-pong ball. Its volume was several times larger than the crystal core Gray had hunted before. It was not difficult to see the huge difference between magic light and annihilation. Gray picked it up and put it into his space item. After greeting the middle-aged woman, they parted ways and continued their search. 2 days later, they had searched the area they were in charge of dozens of times. After failing to find any more void beasts, Gray gathered everyone and began to count their spoils. 2 annihilation, 14 magic light, and 31 regent. The harvest was not bad. There were 40 magic light and king class cores. There were 2 annihilation class cores. Gray was not the only one who had obtained an annihilation class crystal core. Fahad had some as well. He had killed an Annihilation-class void beast all by himself. After putting all the crystal cores into his space item, Gray did not plan to share the crystal cores with the others. He planned to keep them for himself. After all, after this, there was almost no way to obtain them again. They were scarce resources. Plus, these things could only be used to their fullest potential on him. He only needed to keep them close to him, and he could continue to increase his power. The others could only increase their power when they cultivated, so the effects were not as great as his. Of course, he would not treat the others unfairly. Everyone was rewarded with many magic potions that aided in cultivation. With the resources of the Leopold family and the Wyckoff family, as well as Aubrey, a level 4 potion master, he had accumulated many magic potions that aided in cultivation. Other than for his own use, he had a large surplus. He might as well use it as a reward. I wonder how much the Wyckoff family and the Yugas family have gained. After counting his spoils, Gray could not help but think of the Wyckoff family and the Yugas family spoils. Not only the Wyckoff family, but even the Yugas family spoils were considered his. Thinking of the Yugas family, his lips curled up. The Yugas family and the Wyckoff family had agreed to meet tonight. He did not know how the Yugas family would react when they found out they had been betrayed, but it would definitely be interesting. At night, the purple moon hung high in the sky. The Yugas family quietly left the area they were in charge of. Under the cover of the night, they rushed toward the area the Leopold family was in charge of. Mr. Jose, are you really going to give one of the 3 inherited weapons to the Wyckoff family? In the rush, a middle-aged man's face was filled with reluctance. Even in the hands of an Annihilation-class elite, a legacy weapon was a weapon that could increase a person's power beyond their level. It was a weapon that could be passed down in a family. Even the Urgas family, which was ranked in the upper echelons of the top families, only had 3 of them. One could well imagine how precious such a weapon was. But the Leopold family, which was ranked at the bottom, also had 3 of them. This was also the reason why other families were envious of the Leopold family. The young man, Jose, had a blurry face under the purple moon. He had a creepy, cold smile. If the Wagia family didn't suffer a great loss in the process of attacking the Leopold family, then he would naturally follow the previous agreement. If the Wagia family suffered a great loss, then he naturally wouldn't mind taking care of the Wagia family as well and devouring them together. The purple moon hung high in the sky. It was close to midnight. The 30 people of the Yugas family sneaked into the area the Leopold family was in charge of. They arrived near a stone mountain that did not have any plants. That was where they were supposed to meet up with the Wyckoff family. They were going to meet up there. They were going to search for and kill the Leopold family. The people of the Wyckoff family had not arrived yet. They carefully looked around. After confirming there were no ambushes, they waited for the Wyckoff family to arrive. More than an hour later, more than 10 figures rushed over. Seeing these figures, the 30-plus people of the Urgas clan couldn't help but stand up and be on guard. "Who is it?" the young man, Jose, asked. "It is me," the leader of the group replied. His voice sounded old, and under the moonlight, one could vaguely see that his back was slightly hunched. "You're a bit late." Hearing the voice and seeing the figure, the young man, Jose, relaxed. The people of the Yugas family behind him also relaxed. The people who came were indeed from the Wyckoff family. In order to keep it a secret, we took a lot of detours. The hunchbacked old man, Jerome, explained. The young man, Jose, did not doubt the hunchbacked old man, Jerome's explanation. He turned his attention to the target this time and said, "At most, there are 4 to 5 hours before dawn. It is best if we can find the Leopold family's base before dawn and kill them when most people are asleep at night." "I agree, but 4 to 5 hours might not be enough to find the Leopold family's base." The hunchbacked old man, Jerome, frowned slightly. "Don't worry about that. My Yugas family brought people who are good at tracking. We have already obtained the items used by the Leopold family. We have enough time." The young man, Jose, said confidently. "Looks like your Yugas family is determined to win this time. You are actually so well prepared." The hunchbacked old man, Jerome, looked at the young man, Jose, in surprise. Of course, my Yuga's family does not do things that we are not sure of. The young man, Jose, smiled proudly. But in the next moment, his pupils suddenly shrank. He looked at the hunchbacked old man, Jerome, in shock and disbelief. A red spear suddenly appeared in the hands of the hunchbacked old man, Jerome. Red flames burst out from the spear and quickly pierced towards him. He had not expected that the other party would suddenly make a move on him before making a move on the Leopold family. He had thought of doing something to the Vega family after destroying the Leopold family. Naturally, he had also considered the possibility of the Vega family doing something to the Urgas family. However, there was a premise, and that was that the Leopold family had already been destroyed. Before the Leopold family was destroyed, it was impossible for this to happen. But now it happened. Blurg. He had no time to dodge such a sudden attack. He only had time to avoid being hit. The red flame spear pierced him. His body was covered in flames as he flew away. At the same time, a dozen people followed the hunchbacked old man, Jerome. They suddenly attacked the people of the Yugas family. Ka! 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 The silver-haired old woman suddenly exploded with the cold air. It froze an annihilation-class elite that was close to her. Even the demon light warriors that were close to her were turned into ice sculptures. Sheila, the tall, skinny old man, Felipe's long spear was covered in red flames. It pierced the abdomen of an annihilation-class elite of the Yugas family. It left a scary wound in his abdomen. More than 10 demonic light warriors in the surroundings were affected by the flames. Large areas of their bodies were burned and sent flying. Zap! Fod, who was hiding among the Waika family, suddenly turned his right hand into a long sword that was a few meters long. The long sword was covered in red flames. He slashed toward an annihilation-class elite of the Yugas family. The annihilation-class elite quickly raised his right hand to block, but his right hand was cut off by the sword. Whoosh! Gray, who was hiding among them, was covered in purple light. He suddenly appeared next to an annihilation-class elite of the Yugas family. The sword, which was covered in dark green mist, stabbed the Yugas family's annihilation-class elite in the chest. It ended the annihilation-class elite's life. It was an unexpected attack. The Yugas family was stunned. One annihilation-class elite was killed. 4 annihilation-class elites were injured. A dozen magic light warriors were killed. Fod! Why are you here? Jerome, you are working with the Leopold family. Clutching the wound on his shoulder, the young man, Jose, could not believe what he was seeing. He looked at Fod, who had appeared in the Waika family's camp, with shock. Any family could work with the Leopold family. Only the Waika family, who had a grudge against the Leopold family, could not. Because of that, he had sought out the Waika family and worked with them. Now, something he thought was impossible was happening right in front of him. The Waika family, which he thought would never work with the Leopold family, had joined forces with the Leopold family. Are you surprised? You are even more surprised. Holding a red spear, the old man with a hunchback, Jerome, coldly smiled. A red pillar of fire attacked the young man, Jose. Waika family, Leopold family. Good. Very good. The Yugas family has never suffered such a loss before. You're all going to die. Looking at the red pillar of fire coming toward him, the young man, Jose, was so angry that his face was twisted. His body had a powerful presence. A sword full of black markings appeared in his hand. He stabbed it into the ground. Then, a large number of shadows spread out from under his body, rapidly expanding in the night. It could be vaguely seen that these shadows were different from ordinary shadows. Their surface was dark green. It was the Yugas family's mixed power. It was a combination of shadow element and poison element. It was called Poison Shadow. Catcha! The red pillar of fire from the old man with a hunchback, Jerome, was shattered by the dozen poison shadow tentacles. At the same time, a dozen thick poison shadow tentacles came out and attacked the old man with a hunchback, Jerome. What? Seeing his attack being blocked so easily, the hunchbacked old man Jerome's expression became serious. As he dodged, he waved the spear in his hand, cutting off several attacking tentacles. However, he was hit by even more tentacles, and his body was sent flying. He crashed into the stone mountain behind him, and the stone mountain collapsed. Chapter 709. The second tier of Annihilation Class. Gray's eyes froze. He looked at the young man, Jose, with shock. With a legacy weapon, Jerome's battle power was able to reach the second tier of Annihilation Class, but the man had easily blocked Jerome's attack and sent him flying. Even with the buff of the legacy weapon, the man's own level was still at the second tier of Annihilation Class. He was definitely a second-tier Annihilation Class elite. It is no wonder why they are one of the top families. They are much stronger than the Vega family. They even have a second-tier Annihilation Class elite. After Gray was shocked, he thought it was reasonable. After all, they were one of the top families. They had at least 6 Annihilation Class elites. It was not impossible for a family like that to have a second-tier Annihilation Class elite. Boom! With a punch, Jerome, whose clothes were in tatters, rushed out. Although he was in a sorry state, he wasn't injured. There was a layer of silver on his body, which was the alloying ability that Gray had bestowed upon him. Seeing that Jerome didn't seem to be seriously injured, the young man Joss was slightly surprised. Then, his cold killing intent turned into dozens of dark green poisonous shadows that merged together, turning into 3 thick dark green poisonous shadows that whizzed towards Jerome. Pung, 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 pung. His body was covered with purple light. Gray became a purple shadow and appeared in front of Jerome. He used a space shield to block the 3 giant dark green toxic shadows. Leave this to me. You go and deal with the others. Looking at the young man, Jose, Gray gave orders to the old man, Jerome, with a hunchback. With Jerome's defense, even with the power of the 3 giant tentacles, he should not have been hurt. It would have been difficult for him to fight or even defeat the young man, Jose. Yes, the old man replied. He went for an Annihilation Class elite of the Urgas family. He would carry out Gray's orders without question. Did you plan everything that happened today? Seeing Gray quickly appear and use an invisible shield to block the attacks of the 3 giant toxic shadows, the young man, Jose, squinted his eyes. Jerome was being so respectful to this man. His instincts told him that the conspiracy against the Urgas family that night might have been planned by this man. The only thing he couldn't figure out was why the Leopold clan and the Vika clan, 2 clans that were like fire and water, would listen to each other's orders and be dispatched by each other. You can say that. To be more accurate, the Urgas family is going to attack the Leopold family. That is why this fight happened. If you want to think of it that way, you're not wrong. Gray nodded. What is your relationship with the Vega family and the Leopold family? Grasping the sword with black patterns in his hand, the young man, Joshua, asked with a solemn expression. His body tensed up. Subordinate relationship. Regardless of whether it is the Leopold family or the Vika family, they're all under my influence. Gray said calmly. No wonder. It looks like the conflict between the Leopold family and the Vega family is just a smokescreen you put out. The young man, Jose, felt his scalp go numb. He finally understood why they had been ambushed that day. He had chosen a most unsuitable target to work with. There was nothing he could do about it. Under the smokescreen the other party had put out, he believed other families would choose the Vega family to work with. Many families had come into contact with the Vega family over the past few days. Good plan, but do you think you can beat the Urgas family like this? The young man, Joshua, sneered. He glanced at the others who were already fighting fiercely. Gray also glanced at them. The 2 sides were madly fighting. Surprisingly, it was not the Vega family or the Leopold family that had the advantage. It was the Urgas family. In the beginning, the Vega family and the Leopold family's ambush had caused the Urgas family to lose many people. However, the Urgas family was very strong. Even though they had been ambushed, the number of people left was not less than the Vega family and the Leopold family. Plus, in the Urgas family, aside from the young man, Jose, who had inherited weapons, there were 2 other Annihilation Class elites who also had inherited weapons. Therefore, the Urgas family had the advantage. With our current power, it is not enough to keep the Urgas family here. Gray nodded and agreed with the other party's judgment. He did not look scared. He looked at the young man, Jose, with a mocking smile. How about this? Don't. A behemoth crashed to the ground, and the ground shook violently under the weight of the behemoth. It was a behemoth with a body length of more than 40 meters, and its body was covered in spikes. Disaster Class Blood Beast, Thorn Disaster Crocodile. The young man, Jose, was shocked. He suddenly had a bad feeling. The other party had a Disaster Class Blood Beast. If that was the case, they did not have the advantage when it came to Disaster Class combat power. They were at a disadvantage. At this time, there was another loud noise. While he was still in shock, another giant creature appeared. It was a giant ape that was more than 30 feet long. Its body was red, as if it had been soaked in blood. With his Annihilation Class knowledge, he could recognize that it was a Disaster Class Blood Beast, Bloodthirsty Disaster Ape. Dong! Before he could react to the sudden appearance of the bloodthirsty Disaster Ape, there were two more loud noises. A giant python that was more than 50 feet long and as big as a mountain appeared. There was also a giant beast that looked like it had been bathed in gold. It had the beak and wings of an eagle and the body of a lion. Black swamp python, gold griffin. The shock on his face turned into shock. The young man, Jose, felt his scalp go numb. His body felt cold. He subconsciously uttered the names of the other two types of blood beasts. Including the 4 disaster-level blood beasts, the other party had a total of 9 disaster-level combatants. On the other hand, they only had 5 people left after the initial ambush. In other words, the other party's disaster-level combatants were almost twice as strong as theirs. With such a huge difference, he could not help but feel his scalp go numb. His heart was filled with shock. What kind of faction had he provoked? Capture the other party. Only by capturing the other party can we escape. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind. He thought of the only way to escape. The other party was the core of the Wagia family and the Leopold family. As long as he could capture the other party, the Wagia family and the Leopold family would definitely compromise. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A large number of venomous shadow tentacles shot out, covering the sky and covering the earth. They were like giant dark green snakes, attacking Gray from all directions. Whoosh! The place where Gray had been standing was now filled with hideous holes under the giant tentacles. His body was covered in purple light. Gray quickly dodged backward, narrowly avoiding the giant poisonous tentacles. Facing attacks from all directions, the space barrier that could only block attacks from one direction was useless. If he could build a space cage around himself, he could block the attacks. However, it would take time. The other party's attacks did not give Gray time to do so. Plus, Gray had already used the space barrier in other places. Shwa! While dodging, Gray pulled out his sword. A purple light swept out. It went toward the dark green, poisonous tentacles that were chasing after him. Suddenly, a large number of dark green, poisonous tentacles were decayed and turned into dust under the effect of the time power. Your attack can be compared to the second level of Annihilation Class. Your power is the strongest among them. You are about the same as me, but it is useless. With a buff of the Inheritance Weapon, you cannot beat me. Under the buff of the Inheritance Weapon, the young man Gray's poisonous tentacles quickly grew back under the effect of the time power. They dragged him up and swarmed toward Gray. Shwa, 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 shwa. Gray kept using his time power. Although many of the dark green poisonous tentacles decayed and disappeared each time, they quickly grew back and attacked Gray again. It can be compared to the second level of Annihilation Class. This should be the limit of the time rule power. Under the attacks of the young man, Joshua, Gray was forced to retreat again and again. Thanks to him, Gray finally figured out the power level of his current ability of the Law of Time. It was beyond ordinary Annihilation Class. It had reached the second level of Annihilation Class. It was not weaker than the second level of Annihilation Class. Facing a second-tier Annihilation Class with an Inheritance Weapon, he was at a disadvantage. He could use the Inheritance Weapon to increase his power. Facing an opponent with an Inheritance Weapon is too much of a disadvantage. It looks like I have to get an Inheritance Weapon that suits me, but it should be soon. His body was covered in purple light. He dodged the poisonous tentacles that were attacking him again. Gray's eyes looked a bit hot as he looked at the young man's sword. You can't escape. At the same time, the young man Josh also looked at Gray with a burning gaze. In the next moment, many poisonous tentacles attacked Gray from all directions. They almost surrounded Gray. No, you can't escape. A smile appeared on Gray's face. He took a step back and no longer cared about the incoming attack. He calmly looked at the young man because his step back allowed him to pass through a spatial barrier. Pang! 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 A large number of poisonous tentacles hit the invisible barrier. It wasn't just Gray's front that was blocked. There were also space barriers on both sides of Gray. All of the poisonous tentacles were blocked by the space barriers in all directions. From Gray's perspective, he saw that there was a rectangular space in front of him. The young man Josh was like a bird in a cage. He was trapped in that rectangular space. This was not something Gray had set up in an instant. With his space power, he could not do it. In fact, he had set it up not long ago when he was talking to the young man Josh. With the young man Josh's speed, it would have been difficult to set up a space barrier around him. He could have sensed it and used his speed to escape. So, Gray set up a space barrier cage in other places. He did not seal it. He led the man into the space barrier cage. That was how the scene unfolded. Chapter 710. What is going on? The attack was blocked by the invisible barrier around him. The young man, Jose, was shocked. He instinctively fell back, but he noticed that there was also an invisible barrier behind him. He did not know when it had happened, but he had been locked in the invisible barrier that had created an enclosed space. Oh no, he felt a sense of danger. The young man, Jose, combined all the toxic shadows together. They became a very thick toxic tentacle. He used all of his power to attack the barrier behind him. Boom! There was a loud noise. It was 100 times louder than thunder. From the sound of the collision, it was not hard to tell how powerful the attack was. It was already at the second level of Annihilation class. With the Legacy Weapons buff, its power should have been able to rival a second-level Annihilation class that had 3 elements. Such a powerful attack was unable to leave a single mark on the space barrier. The space barrier was still intact. There were no cracks. How can the defense be so strong? His full power attack had no effect at all. The young man, Jose, was shocked. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. Although he did not know what would happen if he was locked in this invisible enclosed space, it could not have been a good thing. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The giant toxic tentacle kept attacking the invisible barrier. The sound that was louder than thunder kept sounding. After a few dozen attacks, the invisible barrier still did not look like it was going to break. The young man, Jose, looked pale. He felt powerless. He looked at Gray unwillingly. What kind of power is this? Space rule power. Through his opponent's attacks, Gray had a new understanding of the space barrier's defense. He lifted the corner of his mouth as he answered. Space rule power? No, impossible. You cannot have rule power. Hearing Gray's answer, the young man, Jose, looked shocked. He then shook his head in denial. Rule power. Normally, only the Holy Palace factions could have a power that surpassed single element and mixed element power. Although his opponent was mysterious, he should not have come from the Holy Palace faction. He should not have been able to have rule power. It's up to you to believe it or not. Gray didn't explain further. Under his control, the space rapidly shrank, and the thick, poisonous tentacles collapsed under the compression of space. In the end, the young man, Joshua, was squeezed into a space the size of a coffin, unable to move. It's really spatial rule power? The disbelief on Joshua's face was gradually replaced by doubt. He felt as if he was in an invisible cage, and as the cage shrank, the space he could move and became smaller and smaller. Finally, there was no space for him to move at all. Such an ability was very similar to a space rule ability. Although it was extremely shocking, the other party's ability might really be a space rule ability. Puff! At this moment, a spear wrapped in blazing flames pierced through his chest and into his heart before being pulled out. A huge hole appeared in his chest, and a large amount of blood gushed out from the hole like a fountain. His vision gradually became blurry, and his head gradually became dizzy. His entire body became weak and limp. Aside from Gray, There was another person next to him. It was Jerome. It was Jerome who had just pierced his heart. Regardless of whether it was the compression of space or the time rule power, they were all able to hurt people with second-tier Annihilation class defense. However, the former's body could not be preserved, and the latter would permanently reduce the person's lifespan. Neither was what Gray wanted. That was why he had asked Jerome to help him. Do not let anyone escape. After ordering Jerome, Gray jumped toward an Annihilation class elite that was being attacked by 2 disaster class blood beasts. Jerome politely responded and jumped toward an Annihilation class elite. A moment later, the battle was over. The mountains that had been there had been leveled by the shockwaves of the attacks. The ground was littered with the corpses of the Urgash family elites. Those corpses announced that the Urgash family, which was one of the top families, had been destroyed. Even though there were still some people in the Urgash family, there were not many of them left. He moved the corpses into a forest. Gray quickly used his resurrection power. This time, the Leopold family and the Waja family had joined the fight. They were all people who had been resurrected by his resurrection power. The others had been sent away and had not been summoned, so he was not worried about exposing his resurrection power. Josh, who looked young, was an Annihilation class elite who looked like an old man, and an Annihilation class elite who looked like a middle-aged woman. In the end, 6 Annihilation class elites and a dozen Magic Light warriors had been resurrected. There were 20 people in total. A dozen of them could not be resurrected because their corpses were too damaged. In total, I have resurrected 9 Annihilation classes and 30 Magic Light classes. I still have not reached the upper limit of my resurrection power. I wonder what the upper limit of my super memory power is. Even Gray himself couldn't help but feel a little shocked as he looked at the resurrected army that had expanded once again. The upper limit of his resurrection power was supposed to be 4 Annihilation classes. Now, it was a few times that number, and it still had not reached the upper limit. Such a resurrection power shocked even him, who had the power. He did not let the 2 families stay in the Leopold family's area for too long. Gray allowed the 2 families to return to the area their families were in charge of. Of course, before they left, Gray took all the crystal cores the 2 families had hunted. He obtained 5 Annihilation class crystal cores, 39 Magic Light class crystal cores, and 73 King class crystal cores. Not only that, but Gray also took the inheritance class sword that the young man, Josh, wielded. He did not mind the other types of inheritance weapons, but he was not going to be polite with the sword-type inheritance weapons. The purple moon hung high in the sky. The moonlight was like smoke and fog. At the same time that Gray destroyed and controlled the Urgash family, on the southeast side of the Noah Plains, where the Sandy family and the Crowley family were in charge of, something weird happened. Ripples appeared in the void. It was like a lake under the moonlight, sparkling and clear. A circle of ripples spread out in all directions. The ripples came one after another like waves. They overlapped with each other and became more and more intense. Poof! It was like something had been pierced. In the void, at the center of the ripples, it suddenly became dark. Even when the moonlight shone on it, there was no light at all. Then, dozens of thick tentacles stretched out from the dark place. Each of them was hundreds of meters long and as thick as a house. Boom! Dozens of thick tentacles squeezed outwards with all their might, and dull sounds of collisions could be heard in the void. It was as if a huge monster was squeezing outwards from the pitch-black void, trying to descend into this world. However, although the pitch-black void was extremely wide, with a diameter of over 100 meters, it was still too small compared to the colossal figure on the other side. Screech, after a series of unsuccessful collisions, the behemoth let out an unwilling shriek. It retracted its tentacles, which were as thick as houses, and left. Only the pitch-black void remained. Patter! With a dull sound, dozens of thick tentacles stretched out from the dark void, but this time, the tentacles were not as exaggerated as the previous ones. With a little force, a behemoth with a body length of more than 70 meters came to this world. Feeling the exuberant life aura sprinting around it, the behemoth with a body length of more than 70 meters let out an excited cry and crawled quickly in the direction where the life aura was the most exuberant in its perception. Patter. After it, there were other behemoths that drilled out of the dark void one after another. Some of them were not inferior to in size, and some were even larger than it by nearly 100 meters. A day later, the Leopold clan suddenly received an order from the Chaos Temple, ordering them to abandon the cleanup of the area they were in charge of and immediately rush to a place southeast of the Noah Plains to rendezvous. With surprise in his heart, Gray and the rest of the Leopold clan hurried over. After more than 2 hours, they arrived at the rendezvous point and saw the other top clans that had also arrived, including the Vega clan and the Urgas clan. Have you heard? The Shady clan and the Crowley clan have been completely annihilated. What? The Shady clan and the Crowley clan have been completely annihilated? How can that be? Is there a mistake? I heard it from someone I know from the Chaos Temple. This is the news that the Chaos Temple has personally confirmed. There's absolutely no mistake. As soon as they arrived at the rendezvous point, Gray heard extremely explosive news. The top clans, the Shady clan and the Crowley clan, had completely annihilated their squads to clean up the Void Beasts. Not a single person survived. The Crowley clan was a mid-tier clan among the top clans. The Shady clan was a top-tier clan among the top clans. These two clans, which were not at the bottom of the top clans, had been annihilated without a single survivor. It was not difficult to guess what kind of danger they had encountered. Did they encounter multiple Annihilation-class Void Beasts, or did they encounter a high-level Annihilation-class Void Beast? Gray was shocked. With the power of the two clans, only a large number of Annihilation-class Void Beasts or high-level Annihilation-class Void Beasts had the power to annihilate them. This is a bit strange. The Chaos Temple must have investigated the Noah Plains before this. They must have a general understanding of the distribution of the Void Beasts. They should not have arranged a mission that is impossible to complete. What Gray did not understand was that the areas that the Chaos Temple had arranged for each clan to be in charge of were clearly arranged according to each clan's power. Logically speaking, there should not have been a situation where they could not handle or even be annihilated. However, such a situation had occurred. It was obviously very strange. Chapter 711. All the top families arrived one after another. Chaos Holy Palace quickly gathered the leaders of all the top families to attend a meeting in the temporary meeting room. It was obvious that the situation was very serious. The one who represented the Leopold family in the meeting was Fod. Gray had nothing to do, so he wandered around and bumped into 3 figures. The 3 figures were 2 men and 1 woman. They were all young people. One of the young men looked ordinary. He looked extremely ordinary, but his eyes were very sharp. It added a sense of extraordinariness to his ordinary appearance. It was Landrine Gomo. The other young man was tall and slender. He had a handsome face that would make most people jealous. However, he did not look feminine. Instead, he looked very masculine and handsome. It was George Lopez. The young woman had a perfect body. She wore a blue battle suit that showed off her figure. Her beautiful body attracted the attention of many people around her. It was Blanca Mandy. Gray had some contact with all 3 of them. Of course, among the 3 of them, he had the best relationship with Blanca Mandy. Maybe it was because the opposite sex attracted, or maybe it was because Blanca Mandy was more skillful. In any case, Gray spent more time with Blanca Mandy than the other 2. After the 2 sides greeted each other, Blanca Mandy smiled. "We were just about to look for you. We did not expect to run into you." "Looking for me?" Gray looked at the 3 of them with confusion. He did not understand why the 3 of them were looking for him at the same time. "We are here to invite you. In the upcoming battle, every family's Annihilation class elites will be sent away. When that happens, every family will be in chaos. We're thinking that the 4 of us should form a small team and move together." "That's right." George Lopez smiled faintly. A gentle breeze blew, and his blonde hair swayed slightly. It was as bright as the sun. It had to be said that this was a very charming young man. "If that is the case, I have no problem with it. But can you tell me what the current situation is? How did the Crowley family and the Shady family suddenly get wiped out?" Gray shrugged and asked. The Crowley family and the Shady family's teams were wiped out because they encountered a large number of Void Beasts. They did not have time to escape before they were wiped out. All the top families had to give up their original mission and gather urgently to deal with these void beasts. Mandy said with a solemn expression, "Why would a large number of void beasts suddenly appear in the region that the Crowley clan and Shady clan are in charge of?" Naturally, Gray had guessed that the Crowley and Shady clans had been annihilated by a large number of void beasts. What he was truly puzzled about was how the large number of void beasts had appeared. If they had existed from the beginning, the Chaos Holy Palace would not have given the task of clearing out this area to these two clans. "The void has appeared again," Landry Gummo said with a calm expression on his face. No one could tell what he was thinking. "What? The void has appeared again?" Gray was shocked, but at the same time, his face became serious. The void hole was a hole that connected the void world to the origin world or the dimension. It was the main culprit behind the void beast descent. However, this kind of hole would slowly disappear under the self-healing ability of the world barrier or the dimension barrier. Once this hole disappeared, the void beast would naturally be unable to descend through this hole again. Now, such a hole had appeared again. One could imagine that with the opening of this void, there would be a large number of void beasts invading the origin world. It was no wonder that the Crowley and Shady clans had been annihilated. Not a single person had managed to escape. If the Leopold clan were to encounter the same situation, they would most likely end up like the Crowley and Shady clans if they could not teleport. It has appeared twice in just half a month. How could it appear so frequently? Gray asked with a solemn expression. "I don't know. Even our three major clans have a limited understanding of the void disaster. We can't determine the current situation. The Chaos Holy Palace should know more." Mandy frowned and shook his head. The four of them discussed for a while before dispersing and returning to their tents to recuperate. After all, there would be a great battle soon. Half an hour later, the leaders of the top clans who had gone to participate in the meeting returned. As expected, all the annihilation-level elites of the top clans had been mobilized by the Chaos Holy Palace. Not only that, but the remaining Magic Light warriors had also been asked to participate in the annihilation in groups of 4. The reason why Mandy and the other two had found Gray to form a team was because they had received the news early on. They knew that the Magic Light warriors would be asked to form groups of 4 to annihilate. After all, they were the 3 most powerful clans. They would definitely receive some preferential treatment. It was not hard to understand why they had found out earlier than the other clans. There was no time to rest. Under the orders of the Chaos Holy Palace, the Chaos Holy Palace and all the top clans moved. They surrounded the area where the Crowley and Shady clans had been annihilated from all directions. As the encirclement shrunk, they soon encountered the void beasts. The densely packed void beasts were everywhere. It was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The ones at the front were the annihilation-level elites of the Chaos Holy Palace and the top clans. Every time they attacked, at least one void beast would be killed. However, their main targets were not the void beasts of Magic Light or below Magic Light level. They were the annihilation-level void beasts. They passed through the hordes of void beasts and attacked the annihilation-level void beasts. As for the void beasts that they had missed, they quickly encountered the Magic Light warrior groups of 4 from the Chaos Holy Palace and the top clans. They were engaged in battle. Screech. There was a roar. The sharp sound was like a bomb exploding. Even from a few miles away, one could not help but feel their eardrums swell. 2 elders from the Chaos Holy Palace wearing black robes embroidered with the golden symbol of the Chaos Holy Palace were encountering an octopus-like void beast that was over 80 meters long. A battle broke out. At the same time that the octopus-like void beast's tentacles attacked the 2 of them, a thick black beam of light burst out of its mouth. One of the 2 Chaos Holy Palace elites slashed out a greenish-gold light to block the thick black beam of light. The other person wielded a battle sword and slashed out rays of sword light to cut off the incoming tentacles. Screech. There was another roar, but this time it came from another direction. A powerhouse from the Lopez clan and a powerhouse from the Ngumo clan had joined forces to attack a void beast that was also 80 meters long and had the appearance of a giant toad. There were many similar battlefields. Every time there was a collision, a terrifying power would be unleashed. It made Gray and the others who were far away feel slightly frightened. This was definitely a high-level collision of the Annihilation grades. Both sides of the battle had reached the very high level of the Annihilation grade. They might have even reached the highest level of the Annihilation grade, the 6th level of the Annihilation grade. Rumor had it that the Blanca Manti family had such an elite. It was rumored that the other party had the potential to break through and become a law-level elite. As a faction of the Holy Palaces, the Chaos Holy Palace must have such an existence as well. So strong. Blanca Manti looked into the distance with a shocked expression. As the distance was too far, she could not see the battle clearly. However, just from the commotion, she could imagine what level of battle it was. It's our turn. There was a hint of excitement on Landry Ngomo's expressionless face. His hand that was holding the sword trembled slightly. It was not caused by fear, but by excitement. Kill! George Lopez responded with action. Holding the long sword in his hand, his handsome face had a hint of murderous intent. He slashed at a magic light, level void, beast across the air. The next moment, a golden light appeared and swiftly attacked this magic light, level void beast. This was a very strange attack. It looked like a huge golden blade, but it had the form of thunder and fire. It was difficult to determine what element this attack belonged to. In fact, this was a triple hybrid ability that was formed by the combination of metal element, fire element, and thunder element. It had a power that far exceeded that of a normal ability. Rumble. The golden light hit the magic light level void beast. Then, the magic light level void beast's entire body emitted a golden light. Then it burst into flames. Its huge body fell to the ground with a rumble and no longer showed any signs of life. Woo! Landry Ngomo was not to be outdone. On the battle sword, dark green wind vibrated at a high frequency. As he swung it, it was accompanied by a demonic sound. He slashed at another magic light level void beast. This was a triple hybrid ability that was formed by the combination of poison element, wind element, and demonic sound. It also had a power that far exceeded that of a normal ability. Poof! The magic light level void beast was split into two halves by his sword. It cannot be more dead. Bang! Seeing the two of them attack, Blanca Mandy nodded at Gray and lightly stomped her feet. Then there was a change under her feet. A silver-gray giant rose from the ground and became more than 20 meters tall. Its surface was covered in black vein patterns. Blanca Mandy stood on the giant's shoulder. The giant reached out its hand toward a magic light level void beast. Although the giant's hand was extremely long, close to 10 meters, it was still a long way from reaching the magic light level void beast. However, in the next moment, the giant's outstretched hand rapidly enlarged and elongated. It quickly approached the magic light level void beast and slapped it hard on the magic light level void beast's body. Boom! The magic light level void beast was smashed into a pulp by this slap. Similarly, it stopped moving. This was an ability that was formed by the combination of metal element, earth element, and shadow element. Because of the shadow element ability, it could naturally be easily extended and enlarged. They're going all out right from the start. Looks like I have to show them some respect. Seeing that the three of them had used a triple elemental ability and were almost going all out, the corner of Gray's mouth curled up. Although he did not intend to compete with the three of them, he could not hide his strength at a time like this. Whoosh! Black mist gushed out from his body like a wave and quickly engulfed a magic light level void beast. Then, the magic light level void beast shrunk rapidly. In the end, only a yellow crystal core was left. With a wave of Gray's hand, the crystal core was wrapped in black mist and fell into Gray's hand. Chapter 712. It's them, killing a magic light level void beast in one blow. Such destructive power was extremely rare among the younger generation. Many people looked at Gray and the other three in surprise. Most of them were disciples of the Chaos Temple. As disciples of the Chaos Temple, they had a natural sense of superiority. Even the three strongest families were powerless in front of the Chaos Temple. They were proud of being disciples of the Chaos Temple and had always looked down on the disciples of the top families. Now that they saw Gray and the other three displaying strength that was rarely seen among the younger generation, they finally stopped looking down on them and began to take them seriously. The red-haired Julio recognized the four at a glance. After all, it had only been 2 or 3 months since the Trial Tower trial. As someone who had also participated in that trial, he naturally had an impression of them. He has this kind of strength as well. His gaze swept across the four and finally landed on Gray. His gaze was slightly surprised. Although he was surprised that Blanca Mandy, Landry Gomo, and George Lopez had displayed such strength, he could still understand. After all, the three of them were the most outstanding disciples of this generation of the 3 strongest families. In terms of talent, they were only slightly inferior to him. The only thing that surprised him was that Gray had this kind of strength as well. The Leopold clan was only at the bottom of the top clans. They couldn't be compared to the 3 strongest clans at all. There was a difference of several levels between them. However, a disciple of such a clan was actually comparable to the most outstanding disciple of this generation of the 3 strongest clans. This really surprised him. I've underestimated him. I wonder how many floors he reached in the last trial tower. I think it should be 20 floors. Although he was surprised, he did not think that the other party could compare or even surpass him. He looked down and remembered the other party in his mind. With the other party's strength and potential, the other party was qualified to deal with him. If there was a chance after this, he would try to get in touch with the other party. As a disciple of the Chaos Temple, which was one of the top forces, he needed his own personal network, just like Blanca Mandy and the others. He's not inferior to us. It wasn't just Julio. Even Branca Mandy and the others, who had teamed up with Gray, couldn't help but reveal looks of surprise in their eyes. To think that Gray actually possessed combat power comparable to the 3 of them. Although he had already thought highly of the other party, or else he would not have invited the other party to join his group, it would appear that he had still somewhat underestimated the other party. Just like the Leopold family, the other party could not be underestimated. A month ago, no one would have thought that the Leopold clan, which was at the bottom of the top clans, would be able to defeat the Wajia clan. However, the Leopold clan did it, and even made the Wajia clan suffer a huge loss and have to compensate. As for the other party, they were just like the Leopold family. They usually kept a low profile, but at crucial moments, they would also display unexpected strength. Seeing the performance of Gray's group of 4, the Chaos Temple's disciples were naturally unwilling to be outdone. Poof! A tall and skinny youth from the Chaos Temple wielded a spear that was enveloped in a greenish-black glow. With a stab of the spear, a magic light void beast was pierced through, creating a huge hole in its front and back. The void beast then fell to the ground with a loud bang. Poof! A brown-haired youth from the Chaos Temple stood still. In front of him, dozens of silver metal blades were dancing rapidly. A magic light level blood fiend entered the range of the silver metal blades. Instantly, wounds appeared on its body under the silver metal blades, and it finally fell to the ground with a loud bang. Poof! A beautiful young woman from the Chaos Temple wore a pair of silver-white boxing gloves. She punched the ground fiercely, and then a large number of earth spikes appeared on the ground in front of her. These earth spikes were not made of rocks, but of metal. They were silver-gray in color, and there was lightning flashing on their surface. A magic light level blood fiend was pierced by these earth spikes, and dozens of holes appeared on its body. It emitted charred marks, and after struggling for a while, it finally died. Among the Chaos Temple's disciples, there were more than 10 people who displayed combat power that was not inferior to the performance of Gray's group of 4. Moreover, there were a few people who displayed combat power that surpassed Gray's group of 4. Die! Julio roared. He slashed out with his sword, and dozens of green-gold lights shot out. The 3 magic light level void beasts in front of him were cut into hundreds of pieces by the green-gold lights. Boom! The Chaos Saint's son Alger's silver hair fluttered. His body had an elegant feeling. He was the only person among the young generation of the Chaos Temple and the top families who did not team up with others. An Annihilation class void beast leaped toward him. In a very short amount of time, his right hand became a giant battle knife. The battle knife was wrapped with green gold light. It had a scary presence. He quickly slashed at the Annihilation-class Void Beast that was coming toward him. Poof! The Annihilation-class Void Beast, whose body was 50 meters long, was cut in half by his knife. He had killed an Annihilation-class Void Beast in one hit. Without a doubt, he was the most dazzling person among the young generation of the Chaos Temple and the top families. I can't believe the Chaos Saint's son is this strong. Gray and the other three looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with shock. He had killed an Annihilation-class Void Beast in one hit. His opponent's battle power had not only reached Annihilation class, but it had surpassed the normal Annihilation class. He was only a few years older than them, but he already had such power. It shocked them. His battle power is much stronger than the Light Saint. The other party was not the first Holy Son or Saintess-level genius that Gray had come into contact with. Before this, Gray had come into contact with the Saintess of Light and even fought with her. The combat strength that the other party had displayed was much stronger than the Saintess of Light. Of course, it did not mean that the Light Saint was weaker than the Chaos Saint's son. The Light Saint that Gray had encountered was severely suppressed by the plane's rules. Her power was less than 10%. She was not at her best. Otherwise, Gray would not have been able to survive. In terms of destructive power, I am not as good as him. Gray seriously compared himself to his opponent. He realized that in terms of destructive power, his opponent was definitely stronger than him. Although they both mastered rule power, his opponent's realm was obviously several levels higher than his. Naturally, his battle power was stronger than his. Unless he could unearth the space-time ability attack formed by time ability and rule power, he would not be as good as his opponent in terms of destructive power. However, if I fight with all my strength, I might not lose to him. Destructive power was destructive power. Fighting was fighting. The two were not equal. The stronger one's destructive power was, the less likely one would win the battle. Although Gray's destructive power was not as good as his opponent's, he had many more tricks up his sleeve. Time rule power and space rule power gave him many more tricks. Space barrier could provide him with strong defense. Teleportation could provide him with the ability to get close to his opponent in an instant. Time rule power could provide him with terrifying movement speed and the ability to deprive his opponent of lifespan. With all these tricks combined, he might not lose to his opponent. It wasn't just the younger generation that couldn't help but look at the sacred son of chaos. Even the older generation looked at the sacred son of chaos in amazement. He is only 30 years old, and his power is already greater than ours. Compared to him, we have lived for more than 1,000 years for nothing. An Annihilation-class elite from a top-class family side. The growth speed of the Chaos Saint is not slower than the Saints. In the future, maybe an Annihilation-class elite from the Chaos Holy Palace looked forward to it. If there were two Saints in one Holy Palace, then the Holy Palace would become more prosperous than ever. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Boom. The younger generation competed with each other. The battle continued. Scary explosions kept ringing out. Many void beasts were killed. At the same time, the top-class families and even the Chaos Holy Palace had people injured or killed. Puff! Dozens of thick tentacles were as sharp as spears. A magic light warrior could not dodge in time. He was pierced by one of the tentacles. A hole appeared in his body. His body quickly turned black. Catcha! A giant mouth bit down. A magic light warrior could not dodge in time. He was swallowed. After chewing a few times, there was a scream and the sound of bones breaking. He was swallowed. Poochie! A red pillar of light swept across. A few magic light warriors could not dodge in time. Their bodies were vaporized. Puff! An Annihilation-class elite could not dodge in time. He was hit by a high-level Annihilation-class Void Beast blue light. His body was broken and sent flying. He was not going to survive. As long as there was a fight, there would be deaths. It did not matter if it was the Chaos Holy Palace or the top-class families. There were people dying. Gray had already lost contact with the 5 magic light warriors. Clearly, the 5 magic light warriors had died in battle. Chapter 713. Screech, a magic light void beast that was only 30 feet long and had a scary presence. It was not far from Annihilation class. It roared and attacked Gray and the other 3. Pang! Pang! 2 giant, silver-gray hands appeared and slammed into its body. While its skin and flesh were torn open, its body was pressed down. Chi! 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 Black mist appeared and wrapped around its 4 legs. It corroded its 4 legs and bound them. So! Landry Gomo and George Lopez rushed out. One of them had a battle knife wrapped in dark green wind and a sharp demonic sound. The other had a sword that was covered in a golden light. Pooh! Pooh! The 2 of them kept attacking the bound void beast. The bound void beast kept getting more and more serious wounds. The bound void beast struggled fiercely, but under the double bind of Blanca, Mandy, and Gray, it could not move. Clang! In the end, the void beast screeched unwillingly and fell to the ground. Its body started to dissipate quickly. The 4 of them quickly moved on to their next target. A few hours later, it was almost evening. The setting sun was like blood. It scattered a blood-like light, shining on the blood-stained ground. The battle was finally coming to an end. All of the void beasts had been killed. There was only one void beast that was still alive. It was a giant void beast that was more than 90 feet long. The giant void beast looked like a hedgehog, but its body did not have thorns. Instead, it had many tentacles. Where there should have been thorns, they were replaced by thick tentacles. This was the largest and most powerful void beast that had invaded. It had reached the terrifying 6th level of Annihilation class and was infinitely close to Rule class. Fortunately, it had been discovered early. It had not had the time to consume life before it was discovered. If it had been like when the Void disaster first broke out, it would have taken almost 10 days to gather people. With such a long time, this Void beast could have grown into a Void beast that was comparable to a Rule class Void beast. When that happened, it would have been an unimaginably horrible disaster. Now, the giant creature was fighting 3 Chaos Holy Hall elites and 3 people from the 3 most powerful families. The 6 of them were all 6th-tier Annihilation class elites. Gray and the other Magic Light warriors, as well as most of the Annihilation elites, retreated far away. They nervously watched the fight. In a battle of this level, not only were the Magic Light warriors unable to help, but even ordinary Annihilation class elites were unable to help. Only the 6 of them had the ability to fight against this void beast. Puff, puff, puff. In the Chaos Temple, there was a man with a cross-shaped scar on his face. His left and right hands had turned into giant blades that were wrapped in green-gold light. As he slashed, one thick tentacle after another was chopped off. In the Manti family, a middle-aged man stood on top of a burly giant. Compared to the giant that Blanca Manti had created with his ability, this giant was even more burly. Its height had reached an extremely exaggerated height of 80 meters. Thick tentacles attacked the giant, and from the giant's body, giant hands grew one after another. They went to meet the thick tentacles and blocked them one by one. The attacks of the 2 people had restrained most of the Void Beast's energy. The Void Beast had no time to care about anything else. Boom, boom, boom. At this time, the other 2 elites from the Chaos Holy Hall, as well as the elites from the Ngumo family and the Lopez family, made their move. Violent attacks hit the hedgehog-like Void Beast. Puff, puff, puff. Under the violent and terrifying attacks, the hedgehog-like giant Void Beast body suddenly had hideous wounds. Its giant body was like the ground that had been violently bombed. It was full of crisscrossing wounds. Screech, the hedgehog-like giant Void Beast, suddenly roared angrily. Its mouth spat out a blue light to attack the 4 people. The many tentacles on its body also attacked the 4 people. Boom, boom, boom. The many tentacles were blocked by the cross-scarred man from the Chaos Holy Hall and the middle-aged man from the Manti family. The light beams were also blocked by the 4 people. Once again, the attacks landed on the hedgehog-like giant Void Beast body. Even if it was just the aftermath, it had already caused drastic changes to the landscape. Mountains collapsed, rivers stopped flowing, and the ground caved in. Some of the onlookers were hit by the aftershocks and vomited blood as they flew backward, forcing the onlookers to retreat again and again to avoid the aftershocks. Rumble. After fighting for an hour, the sky had completely darkened. The purple moon hung in the sky. The battle had finally ended. The hedgehog-like giant void beast fell to the ground. The sixth grade annihilation grades who were fighting were all injured. Their faces showed signs of fatigue. For someone as powerful as them to show signs of fatigue, one could imagine how difficult the battle had been. It's finally dead. Seeing that the hedgehog-like giant void beast had been killed, the onlookers breathed a sigh of relief. They all went forward to size up this giant, terrifying grade void beast. What a huge body! Gray and the other three also walked forward to take a look. They stood beside the gigantic void beast's corpse and sized it up. It was as if they were standing at the foot of a mountain and looking up at the peak of a mountain. A sense of awe arose spontaneously. Other than the legendary void beast that was comparable to rule-bending void beast, this is definitely the biggest void beast. Blanca Manti said with a sigh, "It shouldn't be far from rule-bending void beast. Otherwise, it wouldn't have required six grade annihilation grades to work together." George Lopez reached out to touch the void beast's body. He felt that although it was made of mist, its body was stronger than alloy. He was shocked. "I hope that one day we'll have the power to fight such a giant beast." Landry Ngumo's eyes were filled with a strong desire. Such a giant void beast. I wonder how big its crystal core is. Gray's eyes were looking at the void beast's body with a burning passion. It was as if he could see the giant crystal core inside the void beast. Of course, he was just looking at it. He did not dare to snatch it. Snatching it in front of six grade annihilation grades was no different from committing suicide. Suddenly, a strange vibration appeared. Under the purple moonlight, the empty space next to the giant void beast body that was dissipating began to ripple like water. The vibration was extremely intense. In an instant, it had vibrated dozens of times. The void was like the surface of a drum that was being beaten. What happened? They had never encountered such a strange phenomenon before. It made everyone confused. However, their instincts of danger urged them to leave this place as soon as possible. They subconsciously retreated. Kacha! At this moment, there was a crisp sound. The void suddenly turned pitch black. From this pitch black darkness, dozens of giant tentacles stretched out. Each of them was 100 meters long and as thick as a house. As soon as they appeared, it was as if they had grown eyes. They attacked the people who were retreating. Puffed! A few tentacles whipped toward the retreating magic light warriors. Dozens of magic light warriors were hit. They were turned into meat paste. The meat paste suddenly turned pitch black. It was as if something had been absorbed in an instant. Puffed! A few tentacles whipped toward a few annihilation grades. Although the annihilation grades used their fastest speed to dodge, they were still unable to dodge. They were hit. Their bodies became broken and incomplete. Before they hit the ground, they were pitch black and dried up. Pang, pang, pang. 6 tentacles attacked the sixth grade annihilation grades from Chaos Holy Palace. The 6 of them used their skills to defend, but they were all sent flying. Although they did not die, they were injured. Hula, a thick tentacle attacked Chaos Holy Sun Alger. Chaos Holy Sun Alger's presence suddenly exploded. It increased by 2 levels. He must have used a blood skill and a legacy weapon. His left and right hands became giant blades. The edges of the giant blades were green and gold. They slashed toward the incoming tentacles. Blurg! The 2 giant blades' green and gold light dispersed. A scary impact went through the 2 giant blades and into Chaos Holy Sun Alger. Chaos Holy Sun Alger coughed up blood and was sent flying. Although he was severely injured, he blocked the attack. He did not die on the spot. Hula, a thick tentacle swept toward Gray and the others. The tentacle was as thick as a house. It was like a mountain. It swept toward Gray and the others. It was getting bigger in their eyes. Despair appeared on everyone's faces. Many of them did not want to give up. They had survived. It was over. They did not expect something like this to happen at the very last moment. Chapter 714. Hula. The tentacle, which was as big as a house, kept getting bigger. Gray's hair stood on end. The sense of danger gave him goosebumps. He did not care if he was exposed or not. In the face of a life-or-death crisis, he reflexively put up a space shield in front of him. It was the power that gave him the most sense of security, so he used it without thinking. The moment he put up the space shield, the tentacle, which was as big as a house, was only inches away from him. It hit the invisible space shield. The space shield was a shield made of space power. It was one of the sturdiest things in the world, but the tentacle, which was as big as a house, was not simple. Even a 6-tier Annihilation class elite could not block the attack. They were all injured and sent flying. One could only imagine how powerful the tentacle, which was as big as a house, was. Boom! The tentacle, which was as big as a house, hit the invisible space shield. It was a collision between an extremely scary item and a sturdy object that was rarely seen. Catcha! There was a crisp sound. In Gray's eyes, the invisible space shield had countless cracks on it. In the end, there was a catcha sound. It was completely broken. The space shield, which had never been broken since it was created, had been broken. The strength of the power was related to the user's level. The space shield was special, which was why it had such a strong defense. Because Gray's level was only the 3rd tier of magic light, it could not compare to a real space shield. Facing an attack that even a 6-tier Annihilation class elite could not block, it was unable to block it. It was broken. Pang! 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 The tentacle, which was as big as a house, swept across Gray, Blanca Mandy, George Lopez, Landrine Gummo, and many other magic light warriors. Everyone spat out blood as they were sent flying. They landed heavily on the ground. Cough! Cough! They are not dead. The shot from the landing made George Lopez's internal injuries even more serious. He spat out a mouthful of blood, but his face was filled with ecstasy. He had seen an Annihilation class elite die under the giant tentacle, which was as big as a house. The body was broken and black. Even Annihilation class elite could not escape. He did not think he could escape. He had been desperate, but he did not expect to escape with his life. It shouldn't be. The saber in Landrine Gummo's hand had already flown to an unknown location. He struggled to sit up from the ground. There was blood at the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. According to his estimation, he was definitely going to die, but the result was completely out of his expectations. He was actually lucky enough to survive. The power of the tentacle is weaker than expected. No, it's not that the power of the tentacle is weaker than expected, but the power of the tentacle that attacked us is weaker than expected. Her red lips were stained with blood, and Blanca Mandy's face was full of shock. She felt that it was too strange for her to survive this time. Her gaze swept across Landrine Gummo, George Lopez, and Gray to check on their condition. When she saw Gray, she could not help but squint her eyes. The other party's clothes were tattered, and the surface of his body was filled with a silver-gray luster. He must have used some kind of metallization ability. This wasn't what surprised her. What surprised her was that there wasn't a single wound on the other party's body. Under the attack, just now, he wasn't injured at all. Could it be? A light suddenly flashed in her head. She connected the strangeness of the giant tentacle attack and the strangeness of Gray's body. She came to a shocking conclusion. Under the attack of the giant tentacle that was like a house, even an Annihilation Tier 6 elite could not help but be injured. It was not hard to imagine that the giant tentacle that was like a house was extremely powerful. The tentacle that was so powerful, but when it hit them, its power was very ordinary. She then connected it to Gray being unharmed. She could not help but have a suspicion. The reason the giant tentacle that was like a house was so weak was because before that, Gray had used some kind of method to weaken its power. If he had the ability to weaken the giant tentacle that was like a house, he naturally had the ability to block the aftermath of the attack. Because of that, the other party was not injured at all. Is it him or not? Looking at Gray, Blanca Mandy's eyes were filled with shock. She didn't dare to confirm this conjecture, because the conclusion of this conjecture was too inconceivable. Even Annihilation Tier 6 Elite could not block the attack, but the other party had somehow blocked it without being injured. This kind of thing was too unbelievable. It was almost unbelievable. So, she was not sure if this guess was correct or not. Feeling Blanca Mandy's eyes on him, Gray's heart jumped. He knew that his current situation was very obvious. After all, everyone else was injured. He was the only one who was not injured. There was nothing he could do. When the danger came, he was afraid that his defense was not strong enough. So, he used all the defense he could. He did not think about looking too weird. Who? At this moment, dozens of huge tentacles launched another wave of attacks. Immediately, another thick tentacle swept towards them. Blanca Mandy couldn't care less about Gray anymore. Enduring the injuries on her body, she hurriedly retreated. Her current position was still within the attack range of the giant tentacle. She wasn't sure if she could survive the attack like before. Of course, Gray did not care about hiding. After he put up the defense shield in front of him, he quickly retreated. But he knew the defense of the space shield, so he was able to retreat relatively easily. The space shield was enough to block most of the giant tentacle's destructive power. The remaining destructive power was not enough to hurt him. So, he did not plan on using any rule powers other than the space shield. Retreat. Retreat. In the first wave of attack, more than a dozen Annihilation Elites and more than 40 Magic Light Warriors had died under the attack. Now, the second wave of attack was coming. The people who were lucky enough to survive suddenly looked pale. They quickly retreated, but their speed of retreat was not as fast as the giant tentacle. The tentacle that was as thick as a house seemed to have eyes. Every tentacle was heading toward the strong or the large number of people. In the sky, far away, a shadow was flying toward them. It was a shadow that was shrouded in green and gold light. One moment it was in the sky, and the next moment it was right in front of them. Seeing the dozens of giant tentacles attacking the crowd, the shadow that was shrouded in green and gold light coldly grunted. It let out a majestic sound. Then, streaks of green and gold light shot out like sharp swords, attacking the dozens of giant tentacles. Poof, poof, poof. Under the green and gold light, the dozens of giant tentacles that were as thick as houses were easily cut off like bubbles. They were all broken neatly. Boom, boom, boom. The broken tentacles that were as thick as houses hit the ground. There was a loud boom on the ground. It even made the ground shake. Not dead? I'm not dead. A Magic Light Warrior opened his eyes. His face was full of disbelief. He thought he was going to die. After all, he had seen the giant tentacles crush an Annihilation class elite. With his Magic Light class power, he did not think he could escape. In desperation, he closed his eyes and waited for death. He did not expect that death would not come. Instead, there was the sound of giant objects falling to the ground. When he opened his eyes, he saw dozens of tentacles that were as big as houses falling to the ground. The ends of the tentacles were cut off neatly. What just happened? A Magic Light Warrior looked confused. He was so scared that he did not even notice what had just happened. When he realized what had happened, the dozens of tentacles that were as thick as houses had already fallen to the ground. He looked at his friend next to him. He noticed that the other person was looking at the sky. He followed the other person's gaze and saw that in the sky, a shadow was floating in the air. The other person's body was shrouded in green and gold light. He could not see the other person's face, but there was a strong presence about him. He had an innate nobility. There were no wings on his back, and he was not walking in the air, but the other person was still floating in the air. It defied common sense. It was like no rule in the world could affect the other person's body. His face was frozen. His entire body was frozen. It was not just him. At this moment, more and more people were looking at the sky. Their bodies were frozen just like him. They were looking at the cold shadow in the sky. Is he? Gray was one of the many people. He removed the space barrier. His breathing was heavy as he looked at the shadow in the sky. The giant tentacle's power was something that even a 6th-tier Annihilation class elite would be injured. Even the space barrier that he created with his space power would be broken. Under the attack of the person in the sky, it was all broken in an instant. His power was far beyond the 6th-tier annihilation class. His power was far beyond the 6th-tier annihilation class. He had reached a higher level. Above the 6th-tier annihilation class, there was only one level. That was rule class. Saint Randy. Is Saint Randy. At this moment, someone from Chaos Holy Palace screamed. His voice was filled with passion and worship. It was not just the younger generation that had such passion and worship. Even some of the older generation's eyes were filled with passion and worship. Even the 6th-tier annihilation class elites could not help but respectfully call him Saint Randy. Saint? It really is a rule class elite. Gray's eyes looked very excited. Saint was a title for rule class elites. Because their life level had undergone a fundamental change, they went from being mortal to becoming a saint. They had an extremely long lifespan. They had the power to break rules. That was why they were called saints. If the other person was called a saint, he had to be a rule class elite. He was most likely the rule class elite from Chaos Holy Palace. After all, this was Chaos Holy Palace's territory. Chapter 715. It's Saint Randy. Not far from Gray, Blanca Mandy, George Lopez, and Landrin Gomo also looked at the figure in the sky with excitement in their eyes. Rule-level contenders were super contenders who had the terrifying power to control and change the natural order. However, they either cultivated in the depths of the holy sanctum or looked for opportunities in some dangerous places. They rarely appeared in front of the world. Even if it was the holy sanctum, most of the people who entered the holy sanctum might not even be able to see a saint until they died, let alone these non-holy sanctum forces. Now that they were lucky enough to see one could imagine how excited they were. Not good. The broken tentacle is growing back. Everyone looked at Saint Randy in the sky, temporarily forgetting about the void hole and the giant tentacle. Finally, an annihilation-level contender noticed that something was wrong. He looked at the severed tentacle and could not help but change his expression. The severed tentacle was rapidly growing back. Now, it had recovered more than half. Soon, it should be fully recovered. Go back. In the sky, Saint Randy, who was shrouded in greenish-golden light, began to move. First, a majestic voice sounded, followed by a huge greenish-golden ray of light that cut off a large number of tentacles. It then slashed towards the dark void. Boom! The greenish-gold light slashed into the dark void hole. Then, a muffled sound came from the dark void hole. Then, all the giant tentacles quickly retreated into the dark void hole and disappeared from this world. Whoosh! Saint Randy, who was covered in greenish-gold light, appeared beside the dark void hole. Then, he went directly into the void hole and went to the other side of the void zone. He's killed his way into the void zone. Gray's eyes widened. He knew the situation in the void zone. There was no suitable air for breathing, and there was no place to stay. It was pitch black. Other than the void beasts, it was a land of death for all life. Even annihilation-level contenders could not survive in such a place. However, Saint Randy did not hesitate to kill his way into the void zone. Since the other party dared to do so, he must have the ability to survive in the void zone. Saint-level contenders were indeed extraordinary contenders who could control and break the natural order. They could even survive in the void zone, a land of death. Boom, boom, boom. Within the void, there was a terrifying commotion. Even the void was slightly distorted. One could imagine how big the commotion on the other side was. It was obvious that Saint Randy was already fighting with the gigantic void beast. What a huge commotion. Even the void is trembling. George Lopez stared unblinkingly into the void, though it was so dark that he could see nothing. The battle hasn't ended even after such a long time. In other words, Saint Randy doesn't have an absolute advantage. The void beast on the other side of the void is indeed comparable to a nomological void beast. Blanca Mantai's face was full of fear. Regarding the power of the giant void beast on the other side of the space hole, many people were already guessing. Just one tentacle was able to injure a 6th-tier annihilation elite. The giant void beast on the other side of the space hole was probably a rule-class void beast. Furthermore, after Saint Randy entered the void zone, he did not manage to take down this super colossal void beast immediately. Instead, a continuous battle broke out, which further proved this point. After all, only someone at the nomological level could contend with a nomological contender. It must be a nomological void beast. Landrin Gomo agreed with a serious expression. He felt a wave of fear and relief that he had survived the attack of a nomological void beast. Will it be a match? Gray frowned as he stared at the pitch-black void without a single ray of light. In the Origin world, Saint Randy had the absolute advantage. He had easily cut off the giant void beast's tentacles and chased it back to the Void Zone. However, in the Void Zone, it was hard to say whether Saint Randy would still have the upper hand. The combat power displayed by those tentacles that were as thick as a house was definitely not the full combat power of the giant void beast on the other side of the Void Zone. It was obvious that the other party was unable to come to this world due to its enormous size, so it could not unleash its full power. In the Void Zone, the other party would be able to unleash its full combat power, and its combat power would definitely skyrocket. Saint Randy might not be able to gain the upper hand. Sir Saint Randy, on the Chaos Temple's side, many people clenched their fists and stared at the Void Zone. There was a faint trace of anxiety on their faces. Obviously, Gray's worries were unfounded. Even some people from the Chaos Temple had the same worry. More than half an hour later, boom! Accompanied by a sharp roar that seemed to be able to shatter the void, the battle came to a stop. Everyone could not help but look at the void that had shrunk by more than half, and their hearts were filled with anxiety. Of course, everyone had retreated far away to a place where the 100-meter-long giant tentacles could not attack. They were prepared to turn and flee if anything went wrong. Swoosh! In the Void Zone, a ray of light flashed, and then a figure shrouded in greenish gold light reappeared in the sky. It was Saint Randy. It's Saint Randy. Saint Randy has returned from the Void Zone. Saint Randy has won. Many people heaved a sigh of relief. If the winner was that super large void beast, one could imagine what kind of disaster it would be. Fortunately, such a thing did not happen, and the final winner was Saint Randy. Sir Randy, that void beast should be the source of this void disaster. How is it? In the Chaos Temple, the man with the cross-shaped scar on his face asked worriedly. Judging from the sudden appearance of a Void Zone, this void disaster was obviously not a coincidence. Instead, it was caused by a Maxim void beast breaking through the world barrier. As long as this void beast was still alive, the void disaster would not end. Don't worry, I've already killed that Maxim void beast. Saint Randy shook his head and said, after this Void Zone disappeared, there shouldn't be another Void Zone. Hearing Saint Randy's answer, the man with the cross-shaped scar on his face heaved a sigh of relief. The others who heard it, including Gray, were inexplicably shocked. It's really a Maxim void beast, and it's already been killed by Saint Randy. They had witnessed the death of a Maxim void beast with their own eyes. Although this Maxim void beast was not a human, it was still a Maxim void beast after all. It could still bring them great shock. To be able to kill a Maxim void beast without being injured, this Saint Randy's strength should not be as simple as an ordinary Maxim void beast. I wonder if he has mastered a second Maxim? Looking at Saint Randy, who was shrouded in the greenish golden light in the sky, Gray guessed in his heart that his face couldn't be seen clearly. Similarly, a Maxim void beast had not reached the end of the road. After reaching this level, one could still become stronger by mastering more Maxim void beasts. Of course, mastering more Maxim void beasts was extremely difficult. Except for special circumstances like Gray's, under normal circumstances, mastering one Maxim void beast was already extremely difficult, let alone mastering multiple Maxim void beasts. Suddenly, Gray met a pair of eyes. It was a pair of greenish gold eyes with dignity and nobility, just like a god. It was Saint Randy. I'm not the only one looking at him. Why is he looking at me? In an instant, Gray's hair stood on end. His scalp was numb, his heart was beating wildly, and his body was completely stiff. He was sure that the other party was looking at him at this moment. This shocked and puzzled him at the same time. There were many people looking at the other party. Why would the other party notice him? Could it be that he can sense the Maxim void beasts on me? Or did he sense it when I used the spatial barrier earlier? Cold sweat slid down Gray's forehead. His understanding of the Maxim Void Beast was too limited. He was completely unable to determine why the other party had noticed him. He wanted to use teleportation to escape, but his intuition told him that even if he used teleportation, it would be too late. In front of the other party, he did not even have the time to use teleportation. As for the spatial barrier, it would definitely not be able to stop the other party. After all, the spatial barrier that he could hold up now could not even block one of the Maxim Void Beast's tentacles, let alone a Maxim Void Beast who could kill it. Swoosh! The gaze that fell on Gray paused for a moment before moving away. Then, Saint Randy turned into a greenish-gold light and disappeared into the sky. When the gaze on him disappeared, Gray felt like he was about to collapse. His body went limp and almost fell to the ground. The other party must have discovered the Maxim Void Beasts on him. It was very likely that the other party had discovered it when he used the spatial barrier to protect himself. However, the other party was a Maxim Void Beast after all. His breadth of mind and vision were not on the same level as ordinary people. Although he had noticed that Gray was unusual, he obviously had no intention of delving into it. In the other party's eyes, even an affinity physique was probably nothing. Although there were very few people with an affinity physique, there were definitely many who had accumulated over thousands of years. However, there were very few who could truly become Maxim Void Beasts. Otherwise, there would not be so many temples with only one saint overseeing them. Gray's affinity physique was probably nothing to the other party. That was why the other party did not investigate further after he attracted the other party's attention. Could it be that St. Randy's gaze was on him just now? Blanca Mandy was shocked to see Gray, who seemed to have collapsed all of a sudden. Just now, St. Randy's gaze had glanced over. Of course, it was only for a very short period of time. Most people might have thought that it was just a casual glance. However, after the incident of luckily surviving, coupled with the fact that Gray seemed to have collapsed all of a sudden, she did not think that it was a casual glance. St. Randy's gaze was probably really on Gray. Her heart was filled with shock and astonishment. Since the other party could attract the attention of St. Randy, it was conceivable that there must be something extraordinary about him. The other party seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog and was full of mystery.